Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candace Marie. Happy Friday. We are here live on March 13th, 2026. We're doing live astrology readings on the new moon in Pisces. If you guys can see me, give me a thumbs up and like this video. Make sure you're subscribed so you can catch other videos while we're here on Fridays. We alternate between tarot and astrology readings. I also have other videos that are peppered throughout the week on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Sundays. So make sure you guys either join my membership, support me as a full-time content creator, or subscribe to the channel and click that bell button below if you want to see more of my videos. We've got a new moon in Pisces that's going to be coming up here soon on the 18th, and that's what we are going to be answering questions and kind of talking about today. Although we have some people who are asking questions about other things too, and that's okay. We'll say hello to everybody in the chat. I know you guys have been waiting for me, so thank you. I know we've got Juny here. What's up, Mahan? Daz is here. What's up, Luna? Emmy? What's up, Bud Island from Vancouver? Puppies. Angie's here. We've got Ellen, Enchanted Crossroads, Cindy, Rosie's here. There's a full house. So happy Friday, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me. A couple things before we get started. So number one, readings are closed. We're not taking more readings. So if we missed you, I apologize, but we'll catch you back here in 2 weeks when we talk about the next full moon, which should be in Libra. So hopefully you guys can catch that. And also next week is going to be tarot. So if you guys are watching this on Saturday or Sunday, we're no longer live, so please don't send any donations, but we will send them back to you. And we will be letting you guys know the readings that we're going to be having. We'll call out the order of the people who are going to be getting readings. So let me let you know who I have on the list. So if you hear your name, that means that you got picked up. And we're going to start with our level 4 members first. So I've got Angie and Ellen. You guys sent me your questions ahead of time. I got you. I've also got Juny, Des, Luna, Enchanted Crossroads, and Rosie. You guys are the ones that got in and got the readings in time. And then we've got a couple people who sent through PayPal. We've got one person who sent through Super Chat on YouTube. So I've got Emmy, Michelle, Elaine, also G, who I know is a member, but I have a note for you. And then Sarah. So if you guys hear your name, that means I've got you. And I'll call the names in advance so that way you can know when your reading is coming up. And if you guys are watching after the fact, cool. I'm glad you guys got your reading. And if you guys can't stay for your readings, we leave these up on the channel so you can come back and you can watch them at a later date. Feel free to leave me comments and let me know how your reading kind of pans out for you. All right, Mercury is retrograde and it is doing its thing. So before we even get into all of this stuff, there is like a bunch of issues with people who got readings this evening. So I just want to clarify a couple things, and I also want to make sure that I've got everything right on my end. So G, if you're watching this, that was your screen name for you sending a reading. It says that you're a level 4 member, and I know that you sent the difference for synastry, but synastry is $70. So if you're a member, you're going to have to send the difference for the $70 if you want to be able to get a synastry reading. 75, sorry. So if you want to get that reading, you're going to have to send the difference for that. And I think you sent like $10 or $11. So let me know if that's something that you want. So if you don't get your reading, then I will refund you. And then we got Puppies, who says I paid for the last one. Cool. That was another thing I was going to ask you, because I was like, wait, I have you on the list last week, but thank you for covering that. But Puppies, thank you for sending I think you sent the difference. Let me see. What was your first name on PayPal, Puppies? Make sure last week went through. Just let me know what your first name is on PayPal, because it's obviously different than YouTube, because it's like an email. So there's like a first or a last name that I can search for. Make sure last week's went through. I don't know what your name is, but I do have you on my list. So I know you got a tarot reading. And then G, if you want to get the reading, you have to send the difference for that. So it would have to be the difference for what you sent. And it looks like you sent $10.01. I saw the two parts of the question. Yeah, it would have to be another $10. And then also there was like a handful of people who had questions about solar return charts, but I can't look at your solar return unless you guys tell me where you live. So I can cast it, but I need to know the solar return location of where you've been living for like the better part of like the last year or two, ideally. And we don't do full-blown solar return readings on the channel. Like people ask, and occasionally I'll look at a lunar or a solar return, but that's like a whole reading. So I'll give you a couple kind of major plot points, but I don't get into the entire reading because that's a reading in itself that really should be like an in-depth, you know, one-on-one session. Yeah, synastry is 75. So you would just need to send the difference basically to make up the 75. So if that's the synastry that you're wanting, go ahead and send that, and then just let me know when you sent it so I can confirm. Just wanted to clarify that. Sorry, there was some confusion. All right, so while you guys are doing that, I'm gonna start kind of taking some of the people, and I'm gonna start with Angie, and I'm gonna start with Ellen. I can email a screenshot of the level 4. Okay, I'll check that in just a second. So I can't check the email right now while I'm live because I'm gonna be sharing my screen. But if just send the difference for whatever your membership is, and that's totally fine. Good with the basic overview. I'm in the same place as birth. Thanks, Emmy. I'll make a note of that so that way I don't forget. And then we'll start with taking Angie, and then we're gonna take Ellen, and then after that we'll take Juny, okay? Thanks guys, appreciate it. I just wanted to make sure we got that short up before we got started. All right, so let's start with Angie. Angie's here, April 21st, 71. She's a Capricorn rising, and she's got her sun in Taurus, and her moon is in Pisces. And Angie sent me a little love note. She says, the new moon is on 3/18, is right on my natal Venus at 28 of Pisces. You've mentioned before that my Venus is my first child, with Taurus being my 5th house. Well, you may remember my first son in outpatient program, and now just celebrated a month of sobriety. That's amazing. This new moon happens to fall right on my solar return of my work anniversary. Also, I just feel it's important. What could it tell me for the up and coming year, my heart and home, with Mercury retrograde having just transversed over my natal 22-degree moon too? Okay, awesome questions. Basically, when you have a new moon that's conjunct a personal planet, so let's get to the new moon so you can take a look at that. There we go. When you have a new moon that's going to be on top of a personal planet, think of it as almost like a reset for that planet. You can also see some of the same themes when you have like a Venus return in this case, which you had recently as well. But the new moon is really kind of saying it's going to be a reset when it comes to all Venusian things. So for starters, you know, you have your Venus exalted in Pisces. And like you said, it is connected to your 5th house, which deals with children. It also deals with joy, creativity, maybe self-fulfillment. And Venus is actually in a sextile still with Uranus. So that's going to make this new moon a little bit more exciting. It means that maybe you're feeling like overjoyed and feeling like there's a lot of pride, and there could be a lot of positive communication that's kind of coming through the connection with your sun. Venus is also in a sextile with your natal Saturn. So when you have the new moon that's sitting on your Venus, the new moon is going to be seeding, you know, new ways of communicating, short distance trips. Maybe it's going to be about connecting with your kid. It could also mean that you're just going to be a little bit more eloquent when you're speaking or connecting or communicating with people. And Venus is also connected to your 10th house of career and your kind of professional status. So it can be about you finally getting some recognition, especially over the next 6 months, because that new moon will eventually become a full moon. And maybe you're going to get a little bit more positive feedback about what you're kind of doing at work. Relationships with people professionally can be great. It can also be a lot of like meetings and agreements, or kind of like networking opportunities that can kind of pop up as well, especially when it comes to like relationships that you have with people professionally. The other thing that I would say to really watch for is that it's really lighting this up. It's sextiling your Mars that's in your 1st house. So when Mars and Venus sextile, it can definitely mean that you're getting a little bit more action-oriented when it comes to maybe communicating, traveling, or learning. And then we have the other sextile that's to your natal Saturn and also Uranus. So it's making some really great aspects in the sky. I think with the Mercury retrograde that's been happening at the same time, it's certainly been a bit of a doozy, because Mercury has been strongly connected with the Capricorn chart about health, healing, work, services, you know, anything that's connected to even communicating with people at work. So I could see that the Mercury retrograde is a little bit of like, wait a second, what do we need to go back and correct, or what needs to be brought up, or what needs to be healed? But that actually started like 6 weeks ago during the pre-shadow. So I think a lot of it's actually really tied to your sun healing. I think it can also be with the moon being connected to your relationships and your partnerships. And the sun is going to be about intimacy and kind of closeness. So it can actually represent a really good period to set intentions for, hey, you know, are you and your hubby going to plan, you know, a weekend out of town? Are you guys going to be more on top of, you know, communicating and telling each other, you know, that you love each other, or, you know, giving each other kind of thanks and praise for things and being a little bit more affectionate? And it can also mean that there's opportunities, if you're not in a committed relationship, to be getting into one, but it's really enhancing communication because it's in the third. If you notice that the ruler of this new moon is also Jupiter, and Jupiter is also trining your moon. So moon rules relationships. Jupiter can be about doing some clearing or some cleansing on a spiritual level of relationships. So it can be like, you know, heart-to-heart conversations and like talking about things and kind of clearing the air. But it can also be kind of removing any karma or any like hidden blockages that are tied to relationship issues as well. And you'll see this new moon play out over time. So basically over the next month, you'll see it kind of go through its like lunar cycle until we get to the next new moon in Aries. But this will play out over the next 6 months, and that's when it's going to become a full moon. And when this becomes a full moon, it's going to be a full moon that's going to be in Pisces, and it's going to be a lunar eclipse. So I would be really focusing on, you know, how you can lean into these sextiles with Mars. Maybe it's going to make you more passionate. Maybe it's also going to help you kind of, you know, make some time to get away and have a little bit of more creative time. I love the new moon on your Venus if you want to take a class, or if you want to learn something, especially something you do with your hands. That would be the third house. If you're wanting to knit, if you're wanting to sew, if you're wanting to paint, maybe you're wanting to make jewelry, or you have some interest in something kind of connected to rocks or crystals. Even Venus and Pisces can be like divination related things. Bosses, not boxes. She says, yes, I love it. We're a house full of cappies, so we need more love. Well, and also, you know, Venus being kind of tied to not just your 5th house and your 10th house, but it's now, we're starting to see Saturn that's like moving away from Venus. So I'm wondering, like, is it about a relationship that you have with your community? Do you have more kind of social connections with neighbors? Are you getting, you know, strongly kind of associated more with like block parties and getting invited to stuff? Is it possible that there's going to be more of an uptick in communication that you're having with siblings or other relatives? That's something else I would watch for, because Venus can represent sisters or cousins or aunts. And I think with, like I said, with the aspects that you see to it and the Mercury retrograde, it's about reconnecting and like thinking about how you feel before you communicate with people, and like really trying to get to the heart of matters so you can kind of connect on a more kind of emotional, intimate way, right? Venus. So I would sit down during the new moon. I would actually write everything out that you're wanting to kind of like set intentions for, and make them Venus things. I want to enrich my relationships. I want better communication. I want to have a getaway with my partner. You know, maybe it could also mean I want to improve my vehicle. I want to get a new phone and a new computer, whatever it is, because it can be gadgets. And write it out. And I would actually take the water. I would take the paper, and I would dissolve it in water. Like put it in water and let it dissolve, and like let the intentions kind of go out, and put it out during like the new moon, like under the new moon, and like leave it out there for like 2 or 3 days. So it's releasing some of those intentions. Trying to sell our neighbor's house, or trying to sell a house to a neighbor. There you go. So Venus can literally represent that there's a woman who's coming in, and the sun represents other people's money. So you may see, like when Mars comes into conjunction with this degree, like down the road, it may reactivate this, and it may give you some kind of offer. So you'll want to see when Mars is conjuncting your moon. I would say from the 29th of March, maybe through about the 10th of April, because Mars is going to represent where there's some kind of action in the home, and like somebody decides to make a move, and maybe the Mercury retrograde is they're going back and forth debating whether or not they want to buy it, right? And then there's the heart-to-heart conversation, and then there could be a deal. So other people's interest in your home is also going to be your 7th house. So if you don't see it during this period, you may very well actually see that be a huge theme in like the end of June going into July when you see the Mercury retrograde. But write down your intentions and dissolve them in water. I think that would be a good way to kind of work with some of those energies. And you could put like some salt, some water-safe crystals that you could put in the bowl to amplify things, right? If you want to do that, like clear quartz, aquamarine, amethyst, just not selenite. But anything like that I would also put in there just to kind of amplify some of those intentions. Hopefully that's helpful. You're very welcome. Pisces is saints too. So I don't remember what saint it is that you use when you're trying to like sell your home or you're trying to find a home. But I would say like a little saint figurine would be very appropriate for that. Or you can give an offering to Venus. So you can put out some flowers, you can put out some like seashells, some crystals, some pearls. That might be a good idea if you're working with her because she likes that stuff. All right. So hopefully that's helpful, Angie. Let me know what happens. Well, your perfection, it doesn't really have so much to do with where you live. Your perfection is going to be looked at depending on what year you're in. Your solar return is your actual birthday chart. But you can see both of those through looking at the solar return. All right, so that was Angie. We've also got, let's see, we have Ellen here. So let's pull up Ellen's chart. Let's see. Let me pull her up. All right, Ellen, I got your little love note. March 25th, 1969, 3:12 p.m. in Iowa. And you asked a question about your house and then you wanted a general reading. So she said, I signed up for a reading. I want to change my question to something that's general. I may or may not be able to attend the live tonight, but I appreciate you. Well, thank you. So let's take a look at your chart here. You are a Leo rising, you've got your sun in Aries, and you've got your moon in Cancer. And of course, you're really kind of feeling the vibes as an Aries. You're like, am I going to sell my house? Because you've got, you know, Saturn and Neptune that's in your sign, Jupiter that's 4th house from your sun. So you probably really resonate with some of the stuff that comes up with like the Aries rising horoscopes about the home changes. So just to kind of give you a little bit of feedback, your home is actually ruled by Mars, because your 4th house is Scorpio. And I will tell you that when you have a really prominent Mars transit, like when Mars is coming up on your sun, which was gonna be in mid-April, or maybe when Mars is going into Cancer, which is gonna be over the summer. And then I'd also watch when Venus and Mercury go retrograde in your 4th. All of those can be periods where you could see some pretty significant changes in regards to your home. I know you asked for a general reading, so obviously because you're a Leo rising, I'm always going to focus on what's going on with the sun. And girl, you were going through like the mother of God, Saturn, Neptune transits this year. So I would say anybody who has planets like 0 to 5 degrees of Aries, they're going through a Saturn transit this year. Saturn's going to be conjunct their sun, their moon or their rising. In your case, it's your sun. And then also Neptune is going to be getting up to about, I think, 4 or 5 degrees this year. So both Saturn and Neptune are going to be sitting on your sun. So number one, if you're a Leo rising, your chart ruler is the sun. So if there's anything conjuncting, squaring, or eclipsing that's impacting your sun, you're going to feel that. So the sun represents you and your body. As a Leo rising, your ego, creativity, life, anything that deals with joy. And obviously you're going through still the sun and, Saturn and Neptune are going through your 8th house. So you're picking up some of the energies of like a Virgo rising, like where they're still dealing with Saturn and Neptune in their 8th, and you're a late degree Leo. So it may be good. I don't want to confuse you, but I would listen to Virgo rising horoscopes, especially over the next month or two, as you're seeing some of the Saturn, Mars, kind of Neptune things that are going to be going through your 8th. And I can see your birthday's coming up here really soon as well. So about a week or two within your birthday, you're going to see some of these major transits on your sun. So that's number one. Number two is that it's even more significant because look at your chart, girl. You've got North Node in Aries, Chiron in Aries, Sun in Aries. So just looking at that conjunction, great. You've already graduated from your Chiron return. I have a theory that when that happened several years ago, I think it was actually preparation for the eclipses that we then had a couple years later. So go back about 3 or 4 years ago, we were having eclipses in Libra and Aries. And now you have Saturn and Neptune coming back into your sign. And you got a little bit of a taste of this transit last spring into the summer. And Saturn deals with relationships, partnerships, allies. It can also mean like working with a therapist or an astrologer. And it also deals with your health, your habits, maybe your pets, or things kind of connected to your workspace. And in astrology, the strongest aspect that you see are like the hard aspects. So a conjunction, an opposition, a square. Well, here's where things get interesting. You have your moon at 3 degrees of Cancer. You have your south node at 0 degrees of Libra. And you have Uranus and Jupiter also at 0 and 1 degrees of Libra. So probably when we have the equinoxes and we have the solstices, I would just assume you really feel them, because when planets cross that like 0 to 5, 6 degrees, it lights your chart up like a Christmas tree. In particular, I would say Capricorn season, because that's what creates the grand cardinal cross here. But anyway, for right now, Saturn and Neptune are going to be in conjunction to your North Node, your Chiron, and your Sun. And when Saturn passes your Sun, which will be in a couple months' time, you're really through the Saturn transit. It'll retrograde back briefly, later in the year. So you'll see Saturn sitting on top of your Sun. Positive is that the Sun is exalted in Aries. So if you're a Leo rising, you got Sun in Aries, you're built tough. The 8th house is a life of major changes and transformations within yourself, but also when it comes to other people's money. So think like taxes, inheritances, things that are connected to partners' money. So when you're asking questions about, am I going to sell my house? You're dealing with an 8th house question, kind of. Selling something is more the 7th. 8th house is more, do they have the money? So you're really seeking to find other people who are going to pay you what it is you think your belongings are worth, if that makes sense. Now, you're also seeing that, Neptune is in the mix. So Neptune's going to be hovering around your North Node, your Chiron, and your Sun. And honestly, just having these two planets on a North Node would be like a year of major healing, major change, major self-empowerment themes, but it's sitting on your Sun as well. And the Sun can represent you and your ego. It can represent sometimes your career. It can also be connected to the men in your life. So think like father figures, stepdads, husbands, brothers. In particular, your Sun is at a 5. So I don't know if you have a boyfriend or if you have like a son, like an actual child, because 5s deal with younger kind of energies, but there could be lots of changes and transformations, and also like a lot of psychological breakthroughs and the opportunity to heal intimacy issues and vulnerability issues when you have these conjunctions in your 8th house. Now, this gets lit up like a Christmas tree because it's not just conjuncting saying, okay, there's about to be some big shifts financially or in terms of your psychological self, but Saturn and Neptune are also squaring your moon. And the moon represents ancestral, kind of karma. It can represent untapped intuition. It can also represent emotions. And so with Saturn squaring your moon, you may feel like it's a little bit more challenging to connect socially because your moon's in the 11th house. Changes in yourself, which is shifting the way that you look at friends and community, and ultimately your goals, maybe even around home or family, Cancer. And it's coming into an opposition with Jupiter. So Jupiter makes everything feel bigger. Jupiter is connected to children, younger people, creative energies, and Uranus, which is dealing with relationships. So this is insane. I mean, we've never had Saturn and Neptune, in the same sign. It's been a very long time since we've seen this. So you're experiencing this for the first time. It may be flavored with similar aspects, if you think about the late 90s, 96, 97, 98, that was the last time that Saturn went through here. And I would say go and reflect back on that period. Was it a time where you had a pretty significant financial change? Was there some kind of relying on a partner's money? Was there some kind of windfall? Were you trying to pay off debt? Were you kind of dealing with loans? These things could have kind of happened, and you're going to see some of the same stuff that can kind of pop up this year. The only difference is Neptune is going to be there. So you have to be very cautious because Neptune in the 8th house means that, when you're dealing with merging your finances with other people, you need transparency and you need clarity. So for example, if you're trying to sell your house, make sure that people are making offers are actually, they have the money, right? They're not going to back out. Make sure that you're reading all the fine print, you're working with professionals to ensure that the sale is going to go through. There's nothing weird or kind of off about, people who are making you offers. There can also be a need to really kind of go through any joint finances with a fine-tooth comb and making sure that there isn't any holes in the financial bucket and that there isn't any issues with security when it comes to credit cards or when it comes to your credit. And if you are in a relationship or you're partnered, it's going to be bringing up a lot of things connecting to other people's money. And it's just, natally, this is all over your chart too. You've probably always had, you know, periods of just like windfalls, and then periods of where things have been a little tight because you have Jupiter in your second in opposition to your sun. North Node in the 8th house is you're here to embrace change and also have, I think, more access to other people's resources. And the Chiron sun there is also kind of saying that it's teaching you to kind of heal through this feeling of not being enough or not being able to ask for, you know, stuff from other people. So you can sometimes wind up in relationships where people have financial issues. Maybe you can find yourself in situations where, you know, you're willing to kind of sacrifice some of your things for other people, but you don't always kind of feel like it's getting paid back. And so this is where it's kind of picking up on the energy of the Virgo rising chart, where a lot of Virgo risings are saying to me, I need to trim the fat. You know, I'm cutting back with my spending. I'm paying off my debt. I'm cutting employees, you know, I'm making sure that invoices are, you know, getting paid to me. I'm going after what is mine. So you have to make sure that you get what is yours, and Saturn will make sure that other people have to pay their way. So don't let other people nickel and dime you. Be mindful of who you're kind of working with or kind of collaborating with financially, and ensure that, you know, you're not falling for like sob stories of other people. And watch for like the emotional and psychological shifts that can kind of happen here. I would assume with like Saturn hitting your sun, and also with Neptune hitting your sun, it's going to be a very psychic period for you. Like I've seen people go through these transits in the 8th house where all of a sudden they have like this really sudden awakening. And they're like, why is it all of a sudden I'm having dreams about like deceased ancestors? Or like, why do I feel like I'm like hearing things or seeing premonitions? Because Neptune can be kind of spooky. And the 8th house can represent death and the other side. And you may find that you become super fixated on studying the occult or things that are connected to metaphysics, meditation, past life regression. You know, I've gone through similar transits, and I remember when Saturn went through my 8th house and it was making aspects to my sun and also my Pluto, which you've kind of had recently. That's when I read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and I was like, this is amazing. Like learning about how the soul kind of goes to the other side, and like the whole process of like that transition, and like what it's like and how we get judged and the whole 9 yards. So anything that's ancient or anything that is going to be connecting to the other side. I mean, you know, you might get really into, you know, hearing people's near-death experiences, or, you know, talking to a psychic medium, or maybe you feel like you start kind of tapping into some of these abilities. They will come pretty strong, and you'll see this really start to kick up, I would say, right about now. The end of March is when Saturn's going to hit your sun, and then you're going to see later, as you're getting into mid-April, Mars and Saturn and the sun are going to come into conjunction. And that tells me there is going to be some major karma, either revolving around finances in your home, or some major karma in regards to inheritances, taxes, something that is being owed to you. And I would say keep an eye on your house, especially like make sure it's insured when you're going through these transits in the off chance something happens, and ensure that you're just really paying attention to like, you know, your home expenses. You may look at this and go, well, I'm not going to take a low offer. If somebody offers me something, I'm going to drop a hard bargain. Or you might consider refinancing a mortgage, or kind of trying to get like a lower rate, trying to cut the rates when Saturn and Mars are coming together here as well. Lots of financial karma, lots of family karma. And then it's going to start to clear up after that point. And you'll see Neptune is going to be dancing on your Chiron and your sun basically all year long. So if you're not somebody who's, you know, dealing with kind of trauma or, you know, needing some kind of therapy, I would say it's going to be more spiritual. But if there is a loss, or there is a sudden, you know, kind of man that leaves your life, or there is a sudden kind of major financial fluctuation and change, likely it's going to lead to there being some kind of emotional and psychological breakthrough. My goodness, it's just, you have planets that are kind of lit up all over the place. So really pay attention to that period. And I would also pay attention to when Mars starts to come onto your moon and it squares Saturn, and that's going to be around mid-August. And then you'll see another peak period when Mars is going to oppose Saturn and it's going to square your moon. But that's not going to be until next year. So when it goes into Libra, right around here. So it'll be August of next year. It'll oppose Saturn. And this is the preparation for your Saturn return. So it looks like next year is when you're actually officially going to be in it. But go back and think about what happened when you were like 27 to 30. Some major change happened. Maybe you traveled, maybe you went back to school, because it could be picking up the energy of your ninth. What major shift did you go through in that 3-year period? Because it was very compounded because you have so many planets in Aries, but at the same time, it was squaring your moon and it was opposing your Jupiter and Uranus. So it was like this whole like rebirth of the self. So hopefully that's helpful for you, Ellen. You'll have to kind of let me know what happens, but that's quite the chart that you're going through. Go and learn about Saturn and Neptune transiting your sun is what I would recommend doing, and learn about Saturn and Neptune that's squaring your moon. You're pretty much through the opposition to Uranus and Jupiter. So you're really just dealing with the sun conjunction and the moon square. Come back, let me know what happens during those periods, and hopefully that was helpful for you. All right, so we've got those two ladies taken care of. Let's see, who else do we have here? So we've got Juny, Des, and Luna. You guys are all next up. Thank you guys for your patience. Synthcat says, I had this thought today. Venus in Scorpio is supposedly in detriment. Wouldn't it make sense that Venus in Scorpio is one of the latest degrees of evolutions of Venus? Libra used to be part of Scorpio. Well, yeah, I've heard that Virgo used to be part of Libra, or that Virgo kind of got factored in. I don't know how much truth there is to that. But I really feel like, especially with Taurus and complementary to Venus, and well, part of it's because like Scorpio has this opposition to Taurus, and it is second house to Libra, so it can talk about values and resources. But I think the opposition to Taurus, where it's about life and growth and indulgence and personal pleasure and what's mine, really the house of merger is Scorpio, or the sign of merger is Scorpio, right? Leo is more kind of like romance, falling in love, one night stands, and then Libra is more commitment or marriage or togetherness, and then Scorpio is more the merger. So whether it's, you know, sharing a credit score, talking about fears, intimacy, you know, having children, like that really talks about the merger. And I think because of the opposition to Taurus, there's a lot of this trepidation and fear of like, you know, really merging because it's a fixed sign and losing oneself, or having to detach, or like losing something that brings security. I don't know, I have a lot of friends and also some family that have Venus in Scorpio. They're super loyal. It just takes a really long time, I think, for the fixed signs just in general to get over like relationships, you know? I'm just bringing up a vision. It might be far-fetched. No, it's an interesting perspective on that. I always appreciate when people give their 2 cents on stuff. All right, so let's pull up and take a look at Juny. What's up, Juny? Let's see what Juny said. I'd like to cash in on my monthly reading. Is my marriage likely to improve and become stable if I stay and continue to work on it? May 7th, 1996 in Valencia at 1:49. So you're Virgo rising. Interesting that you're asking this, because this is kind of like the finale of, you know, Saturn and Neptune finally leaving your marriage house. So now it's in Aries and you're coming into your Saturn return. There's 2 ways to look at this. One is, you know, to play a devil's advocate, I'm going to talk about both sides of this. You know, for the last 3.5 years, you've had eclipses in your 7th house. You've had the North Node in your 7th house. It's been conjunct your Juno. So it's been really like, focus on the relationship, you know, give to the relationship, work on it. But Neptune's a bit of a stinker, and it can create some issues where you're trying to help and you're trying to fix things, but you're like, are they helping themselves? Like, are they pulling their weight in the relationship, or are they running away? Because Pisces could represent where they're running away. And at the same time, you have been seeing, like last spring, that there were some retrogrades. There was a Mercury retrograde and a Venus retrograde in the spring of last year, which could have been a little tricky. And technically, Jupiter and Neptune rule your 7th house. So you have to look at what's going on with Jupiter. Well, Jupiter right now is in Cancer. So you're in your Jupiter opposition this year. So there's a lot of maybe getting feedback and advice from other people on, you know, what your friends think about your relationship, or if people are trying to give you kind of advice and kind of talk to you about how to navigate that. So that'll come through the Jupiter opposition big time. You also have Neptune, which is now going to be spending the year in conjunction to your Saturn. So you're not just having your Saturn return, you're also having Saturn and Neptune conjunct. So there's going to be this sense of you going, do I really feel safe in this relationship? And that could be emotionally, that could mean, can you be yourself? Saturn in Aries is a lot about your identity. And Saturn conjunct Neptune can mean that there is this fear of losing your identity in the relationship, or that the relationship is being held together because of physical or like financial things, right? So it's a lot of like, well, if I end the relationship, what are the financial repercussions? And it looks like you think about this a lot because Saturn is at a 3. So you're in your Saturn return. The other way of looking at this is that your natal Jupiter is in Capricorn, so it's kind of debilitated, it's retrograde, and it squares the north and the south node. So usually when I see like the 7th house ruler in the 5th, like it's a pretty good indicator of, yes, when you get married, you'll get married for love, right? And like the idea of being in love or having a family or whatever. But your 7th house lord is debilitated, and it's also retrograde. And if your north node's in Libra, you really value the idea of investing yourself in a relationship. You're here to learn about relationships. Your south node is in Aries, which means you're moving away from this sense of needing to be super focused on being an individual. Maybe you've had lifetimes before where you've been nomadic, or you've been, reluctant to want to settle down or kind of commit. So when Jupiter squares the north and south node, it says the gateway to getting to your north node of really investing yourself more in relationships is going to be your 5th house, which means you have to do work, Capricorn, emotional labor, and also commitment to a partner. And also it might mean that children could potentially be a major deciding factor in relationships. So you can get in relationships and then be like, is this the person I want to have kids with? Is it not? Are we on the same page about that stuff? And it's just because of the aspects, it's very, very, very influenced by your Saturn. So your Saturn return is going to get you thinking about, do I feel safe? Are we connected? Can we evolve? Can we grow together? And I've never seen like a Saturn transit in the 8th house not materialize as somebody not contemplating or considering going to therapy. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that may be helpful, especially talk therapy, because your Saturn's at a 3, to work through some of the issues that you have revolving around, okay, love this person, want to be with this person, want it to work, but also like I need more. And it may help you as kind of being like the middle ground while Saturn and Neptune are conjunct on top of your Saturn to help you work through some of these issues and figure out whether or not it's going to work for you. Because the other thing you have to think about is their chart, right? So there's no determination in your astrology as to whether or not you're going to get divorced. I think that the Venus retrograde last year, the eclipses last year could have definitely done you in. Now that Jupiter is in a decent sign and that, Jupiter is squaring your north and south node, you're going to get a lot of feedback from your friends. And there's going to be a lot of people who either have kids or they're married, or maybe it's going to be family friends or family that are going to start giving you advice about your relationship and probably being like, look, it's work. It requires you to kind of commit yourself. And I would just say, really pay attention to the advice that you're being given. Now, to play devil's advocate, the other thing that I think about is that you have Uranus that has been conjunct your Mercury, and Mercury rules you. So over the last 2 years, there's been this restlessness, wanting independence, maybe wanting freedom in the 9th house, feeling kind of stressed with communication. And you've also had Saturn and Neptune, which has been squaring your Venus. So, you have had so many different things going on. It's been impacting relationships. Generally, I don't see relationships end until we either see it in the composite chart or if I see something going on with the 6th house. And you have in your 6th house, or on the cusp of it, Uranus. So I'd be watching like when Pluto's coming into conjunction with Uranus, maybe if you're having some eclipses that are going to be happening there over the summer, if that materializes as a turning point and you're like, I'm not going to do it. I also think that, there's one more eclipse that's going to happen. There's going to be an eclipse in August that's going to be in Pisces, and that'll be a full moon lunar eclipse in your 7th, which could show you some kind of dramatic conclusion in a relationship, and that's actually going to square Uranus that'll be in your 10th. So my guess is probably sometime between July and August when you have an eclipse in your 7th house of marriage that squares Uranus in your 10th house of status, and also when you have that full moon in Aquarius that's going to be before that, that's going to be more of like a time where you're going to be like, is this going to be working? And you're in your Saturn's return. So before you throw in the towel, I would say maybe a good idea or be worth talking to somebody. Like you can go and talk to an astrologer and run the synastry and have them look at it and be like, can you run the composite chart? Tell me what it looks like. Are we compatible? What can we do to better understand each other? And maybe that could be part of the Saturn and Neptune transit in your 8th, is if you're willing to invest in either a therapist or somebody who can really understand and break it down. So you understand what's going on with your chart, and you also understand what's going on with your partner's chart. Thank you, Crossroads. Sorry, guys. Can you hear me? Let me know if I'm still cutting in and out, because I don't want you guys to miss what I'm kind of saying. Okay. All right. Well, if you guys are having an okay time hearing me, give me a thumbs up. Let me know. But I would say watch for those periods, Juny, and know that because you're in your Saturn's return, that it's gonna get a little sticky here. You're gonna see over the next 2 weeks when Sun, Saturn, Neptune, Mars, I would say pretty much mid to the end of March. And then when you have Mercury and Mars coming into conjunction in mid-April, like I would preemptively be like, okay, I want to get into couples therapy and find ways to be able to talk to like a therapist about how I'm feeling, and then be able to work this out and decide whether or not it's healthy for me, and then bringing my partner in as like the third party, and use that Saturn Neptune at a 3 to your advantage, right? Cool. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. Juny, let me know what happens and if that's kind of helpful for you, and definitely check in, especially like in mid-April, like let me know what happens with some of these conjunctions, because whenever planets are conjuncting Neptune or squaring Jupiter, that's when you're going to start to see the change. And just be careful about how much you're going back and forth with friends, because you'll have friends that'll be very vocal if you're not happy in your relationship and be kind of telling you like, well, then, you know, you should leave. And they can be very influential this year with some of your Jupiter aspects on your relationship. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Thanks, puppies. All right, so we've got Des, and then Luna, and then Enchanted. Let's see what Des has to say. So Des is a Cancer rising, Sun in Gemini, Moon in Virgo. And let's see, was this on the chat? I think so. There we go. Des says, I want to get my monthly membership reading today. My question is, what do you feel my area of focus should be for me? Advice on the current transits. June 1st, 1990, Torrance, California, 8:49 a.m. So you're Cancer rising, Sun in Gemini, and your moon is in Virgo. What's up, Des? Well, what advice would I give you? Well, I would say there's a couple of things. First of all, how are you doing since you had that eclipse that was on your or around your moon? So you had an eclipse there that was taking place around, what was it, early March? So we're still kind of feeling the effects of that. It wasn't as close as the one that we had last fall, but you know, being a Cancer rising, you're very strongly impacted by the moon. So until we get to what will be the next full moon, you're still feeling the effects of this. It's still kind of like hovering around. And that was a South Node lunar eclipse. So lots of change when it comes to, you know, it could be siblings, communication, you know, anything that's dealing with your mental health practices, Virgo in the third, anything that deals with like movement, travel stuff. So that's still kind of in the air for like the next 2 weeks or so. But if you're doing well with that, awesome. The next thing that you're going to want to be paying attention to is if there's any transits that are going on with your moon. Well, you're experiencing the Mercury retrograde, which has been in opposition to your moon. So you've been watching Mercury go back and forth in the 9th house, where there's been this reevaluation of what do I believe in? You know, where am I going? What is my purpose? Am I traveling? Am I not? And so it kind of feels like it could be really difficult when it comes to communicating and kind of connecting with people. And like it almost feels like a little bit frazzled. The positive in this, though, is that Jupiter just went direct, actually, in your rising sign. So you just had your Jupiter return. And you're also going to be seeing that Jupiter's going to be crossing your ascendant here over the next couple of months. Now, all these planets in Pisces are really ramping up, and the new moon in Pisces is also going to be taking place in your 9th. And that new moon is going to be in direct opposition to your moon. So think of it like this. The Mercury retrograde was getting you, I think, prepared for this new moon. And when you have moon in opposition to moon, moon in Virgo is like grounded, practical, detail-oriented, analytical, organized, you know, and like you don't mince words if you have your moon in the third. But when you have a new moon that's going to be in opposition to your chart ruler, it's basically saying it's getting out of the details. It's getting more into the spiritual side of things, the emotional side of things, about belief and anything that's more metaphysical or etheric, or things that might be different cultures, different belief systems, different practices. So what I like about this is that it is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter's in your sign. It does, in theory, by element, trine Jupiter that's in your 12th house. So it's a lot of maybe studying spiritual stuff, meditation, planning a trip. And you'll see this unfold over the better part of like the next 6 months. Now, what's cool is that this is seeding what will eventually be a lunar eclipse that's going to be in Pisces. And you'll see this over the summer. Well, check this out. When this becomes an eclipse, the, where is it? Yeah, so the eclipse is going to be at 4 degrees, and it's going to be trining Mars in your sign. So I'm wondering, are you planning on going back to school? Are you thinking about maybe planning a trip? Are you going to be working with a new teacher? Anything like that happening? Literally everything I've been having to be this whole retrograde with details, and now I'm trying to relax after I do what needs to be done and have faith that everything will work out. Yeah, okay, so having the faith, I think, is probably the best term that you can use with Pisces, especially if you have Virgo placements. It's like, nothing makes sense, everything's backwards, I just have to kind of like let Jesus take the wheel, like whatever is gonna happen, and like not focus on the details. It's about leaning into the emotions, which I know if you're Virgo at all, it's just kind of like chaotic. And also as a Gemini, I mean, this Mercury retrograde impacts you, and it's scurrying you by sign, so you're gonna hear it's a lot of like career stuff. My thought on this is that if you let things be and you try not to analyze things, that's where like all the magic starts to unfold. And it may lead you to having the opportunity to traveling, making some career changes over the summer. It is definitely gonna be a bit of a wild ride, because that full moon lunar eclipse is going to square Uranus. So you're going to hear as a Gemini, oh, it's going to be work changes. And I wonder if you're going to be traveling for work or doing some kind of training. That's kind of the feeling that I get, which comes up anyway, because you have, you know, Saturn and Neptune that are kind of going into Aries. So you're going to see Saturn go into your career house here over the next couple months. And Saturn and Neptune have been sitting on top of your Mars. So I'm wondering if you have felt kind of lost with what's going on with work. Thankfully, that's about to subside. So you're going to see Neptune move off of your Mars just in time for your Mars return. So I would say gear up, get ready, be prepared for some of these professional changes that are going to start happening pretty much April, May, into June. Uranus isn't close to your sun yet, so you're kind of good there. But things get really interesting when Jupiter sits on your ascendant. You get that Jupiter transit every 12 years, and it's going to bring you probably a lot of work, better health, opportunities for travel. And it's really, you know, friendly, especially when it comes to your moon. So you'll start seeing Jupiter that's going to be sextiling your moon, which also stimulates traveling or education in some way. Other biggies I would say to just maybe kind of learn about to get kind of prepared for some of the transits that you're going to be kind of having would be Uranus coming up on your sun, and obviously Saturn and Neptune coming into conjunction with your midheaven. I'm not sure on the traveling. I was recently awarded disability, so I'm waiting payout and focused on a lot, getting my health better, but I want to get back into making content. So if it's health related stuff, then what you want to watch for is Jupiter. Now that Jupiter is going direct, your health is going to be directly tied to Jupiter through your 6th house and also through your moon. So now that Jupiter is direct, if you're waiting to get some kind of money, that's probably going to be connected to planets coming into conjunction with Saturn. So that might play out over like the next 6 weeks or so, and you'll go back and forth as to whether or not you're going to get paid out. And then Jupiter sitting on your ascendant should, in theory, bring you better health. It's opposing your Saturn, but it is going to be more focused on health, and that'll be at the end of May. And then you're going to see better financial kind of standings when Jupiter is going into Leo. So you'll see that kind of July, August, and September as that's moving into your 2nd house. So I would say don't be surprised. Some of the transits that are coming up can be leaning more in the direction of your 9th house, where it's like you're going back and forth in a legal matter. You're waiting to see if it's going to get paid out, or if you're going to get a settlement, or if they're going to cover something. But beyond that, there may be a door that opens for you to like learn something new that's going to alter or really change the direction of like your life purpose, or something that's connected to your professional life or your career. But boy, oh boy, I think Jupiter hitting the South Node, it's triggering your 9th house. You know, so there actually may be opportunities for you to do something over the summer. So keep your eyes out for education, mentors, learning something that's going to be popping up. And I'm hoping that you have some good vibes with some of your health and healing stuff along the way. All right, so let's see here. Oh, David's in the chat. What's up, David? The hype man. All right, so that was for Des. Des, keep me updated on your stuff. Definitely been changing a lot of mindsets lately. I love that. All right, so we've got Luna, Enchanted, and then Rosie. Let's see what Luna had to say. I was looking at her chart. What's up, Luna? All right, so Luna says, let's see. Would like to get my monthly reading March 17th, 1992. Anything I need to know for my new moon or perfection year? Well, yes. Yes, if you have your birthday during a new moon, so if you guys are having your birthday, I would say on the 17th, 18th, or 19th, okay, of March. If that is your actual birthday, I would consider your birthday to be a new moon because it's on the 18th. So I give it about a day on each side. Anybody who has their birthday around these periods, when you have a new moon birthday, it means everything is a fresh start. The only thing I've observed during those years when we have a new moon is like everything gets flushed out. Like it feels like the month prior to the birthday, everything gets flushed out, especially if you're having a Mercury retrograde that's in Pisces. So I don't know if you guys have been feeling that, but it's definitely happening. The other thing that I would say is like, yeah, so your annual perfection, you have to look at the chart from whole sign, right? And then what you go and you do is you look at your age and what year that you're in. So let's pull up your perfections. So you're going to be turning 34, right? So that means that you're going into a Taurus annual perfection year ruled by Venus. So you can't see it because this is Placidus, but if we edit your chart and we make it whole sign, where is it? There we go. If we make it whole sign, it's now going to show you Taurus fully in the 11th house. So basically you've been in a 10th house year all last year, which was a lot about work, career, status, you know, and it was highlighting your natal Mars, which is conjunct Saturn in the 8th. So it was a lot of working hard for the money, you know, trying to make positive changes and have breakthroughs with limitations professionally, all that stuff. So when you go from your 10th house to your 11th house, first of all, it's no longer an angular house, so it doesn't feel as loud. Secondly, Venus is the ruler of Taurus, so automatically it should be off to a better start because that means that Venus is your time lord this year. So as a Leo, as a Cancer rising, you're always watching new moons, full moons, eclipses, you know, or transits on your moon. You should still watch those, especially because you're going to have some eclipses that are going to be kind of impacting your moon at the beginning of next year. But you have to watch Venus transits. So for starters, the 11th house is kind of like all of the playtime that we get after working hard in the 10th house. So we are more willing to go to parties, we want to socialize, we want to hang out with people, we want to make friends, we want to be a part of communities. This is also the house of wishes, and this is the house of networking and anything that kind of deals with your dreams. So Venus in your chart is natally in the whole sign 9th house, and it's exalted. And it's also in Libra, in Pisces. So Venus in the 9th is saying part of the way that you're going to kick back and you're going to be relaxing or enjoying things more this year might mean travel, right? Because the 9th house can be like, oh, I want to fly back home and visit family, or I want to go and visit a country I've never been to. And Pisces is usually places that have water, places that are pretty. There could be like art galleries, or there could be churches, or there could be like really good art and music and culture scenes, or maybe you're just more willing to indulge in traveling with friends or developing connections and communities to people who are in other countries. That's the other interpretation that I would have. And your Venus is in opposition to your moon. So you are the moon, Venus rules family. So this can mean that what's getting highlighted this year is that there's a lot of back and forth between traveling, making plans, doing your own thing, and also, you know, wanting to stay committed or connected to, you know, maybe your job, Virgo, or maybe your family, right? 3rd house, the moon can be your mom. Maybe you're contemplating a relocation or a move, or you're thinking about going to like a new place that might be further from family. Watch for trips and back and forth. Watch for opportunities to learn. There could be really important teachers or mentors that can come in, and certainly like relationships with family at a distance, because of that opposition, I think is going to be the theme. So then what you do is once your birthday starts, you need to watch when planets go through Taurus. So that'll be like April, May. And then you also want to watch when there's a new moon in Taurus. And then you also want to watch when Venus is on the move. So you need to see if planets are impacting your Venus. Planets are in the 11th house, or you need to watch like when there's a full moon in Taurus, or if Venus retrogrades, which it will this year. It's going to be retrograding in October and November from Scorpio back into Libra. So when Venus retrogrades from your 5th house of romance, dating, children, childhood, taking chances back into the 4th, it could mean that your goals somehow shift revolving around your home and your living situation. It could also mean that if you're dating somebody, you know, that might influence where you decide to live, or if you think about moving in with somebody or somebody wants to move in with you. It's also possible that you could move back home. A Venus retrograde in your 4th house could definitely bring that up. Go and think about what happened in the fall of 2018. That year, that's when we had a Venus retrograde. I believe that was in Scorpio. So it's going to be some of the same themes. But something about like distance and separation from home, or kind of going back and forth between two places, kind of is the highlight. And I would say, knowing that you're having a new moon that's very close to your midheaven, it can mean that your goals involving your career are changing, or you're more willing to spend money on travel or education, 9th house. And then the peak periods that I would watch for would be when Venus goes into Taurus, which is going to be kind of late March, early April, where it can be more pleasurable to kind of hang out with friends and connect with people. And then you're going to have the sun going through there, which is a lot of the same thing, the end of April into May. Mercury will join, so it looks like that can be a time where maybe you're connecting with friends, joining communities or networks, or doing some networking. Be great with like Taurus in the 11th house to like go and take classes to learn about cooking, gardening, jewelry making, painting, anything like that that interests you, and like having like a teacher, because the North Node is hitting your Venus. And you might make some new friends too. And then Mars will go into your 11th house. And that could be especially strong for like trying to meet somebody and dating, or just kind of socializing, and maybe you connect with someone. And then you're going to see that's pretty much it. I mean, nothing's really going to get kind of kicked up, maybe other than when Venus is on your ascendant. That makes you pretty social at the end of May. Venus conjuncting Jupiter can also be really good for traveling and just some good luck in early June. And then when you see Venus come into Virgo, it's going to sit on your moon and on your Jupiter. So that can also be a time where maybe there's some improvement with family relationships. Maybe you're visiting family. It could be an improvement with a vehicle. And what you want to be cautious of is when Venus retrogrades. So that'll be October. And it'll retrograde with Mercury back into your 4th house. So I'm wondering, is there going to be a bit of like a squabble maybe that you have with a neighbor? Are you going back and forth with a sibling? Do you have to go back home for some reason? Just really watch that period, and then it'll go direct in November. And then you're going to watch Venus go back into your 5th house of dating in December, 6th house of work in January. And then it gets good in the relationship department in February when it's going through your 7th house. And then you're going to be preparing for your next return. And that's not going to be until March of next year. Now, something else that I'm looking at is like the North Node's coming into conjunction with your Venus. And that's, I believe, right where the eclipse is going to be. Yep. So on August 27th, you're going to have a lunar eclipse right on top of your Venus in a Venus year. And it's going to square Uranus. So I'm like, are you going to be traveling to a foreign country? Is there a graduation of sorts? Are you going to a wedding? Is there going to be some unexpected kind of changes happening with your love life? Pretty much, yeah, with Uranus squaring. And it could also mean that there could be some really surprising kind of financial changes that can be happening too, in a good way, because Jupiter is sitting in your 2nd. So there could be some money that comes your way that you don't anticipate getting. But watch Venus all year. Definitely watch that South Node that's also coming up on your moon too. That can be a time where there's just a lot of emotional kind of clearing out, maybe some turmoil, especially with like family relationships. So that's kind of going on now until it leaves the conjunction with your moon. That's going to be around June. And then there will also be another eclipse that's going to be right on top of your, right in opposition to Mars on your moon, which could also talk about another move. And then there's an eclipse here. So in February of 27, you're going to have a lunar eclipse that's going to be right on your moon. So if you are thinking about moving or if you try to move preemptively too quickly over the fall, you could end up moving again. So if you're thinking about making a change, moving in with a friend, if there's some kind of shift in regards to what city or what country you want to live in, really plan it out very thoroughly and just make sure that that's where you want to be. Because I could see in this chart there being a couple different shifts going on in the home base. And I would say make sure that that's where you want to go, because I view the Mars retrograde as you being like, oh, am I having to like change direction and go back, right? But yeah, enjoy your 11th house year. It's fun. You can get all that social time before you have planets going into your 12th house. That's when things can get a little bit more challenging next year. Hopefully that's helpful for you. All right, so who do we have next? We've got Enchanted, and then we have Rosie. What's up, Enchanted? Let's see, what did Enchanted say? Cashing in, what major shifts should I be aware that's coming up? Well, how are you doing with the Saturn-Neptune stuff? Now it starts starting to kind of calm down. Just wondering if there's any major shifts I should be aware of and how it'll affect me. There's a couple. First of all, whatever's going on now over the next 24 hours with Mercury retrograde conjunct Mars looks a little overwhelming with the energies, you know, that are out in the ethers. The 12th house could be other people's stuff, what you're picking up on your sleep, things that are kind of connected to resting, recuperating, kind of hermiting out. And Mercury is intercepted through your 6th house, so it can be some unexpected changes to your work schedule, your health, or your habits. So over the next immediate 48 hours, just pay attention to that, especially if something feels off or if you feel like you need to scale back in some way. Scale back. Mercury-Mars conjuncting is saying you might need a little bit more sleep, especially over the weekend. And then you're going to see it come into conjunction tomorrow into Sunday. And then we have the dark moon that's going on, where then we're waiting for the new moon to come in, and then the moon's going to come into conjunction with Mars in the North Node, which is saying a lot of the same thing really into the 17th. I mean, this might be a week where you're just really taking it easy. And if you're feeling run down or you're feeling like emotionally overwhelmed, like take a beat and just don't push through it. That's the best advice I can give you. Especially knowing that Mars is the chart ruler and it's going through the 12th house, like you actually have to just like be out of sight, out of mind with other people's problems and like go into hermit mode, but do something good with it. Spend time by water, get into meditation, maybe some prayer, maybe going to a spa, a sauna, something where you can kind of detox, because a lot of the Aries risings that I'm talking to are getting very squirrely right now. And a lot of you guys are like, what the hell is going on? Like there's part of me that really wants to move forward, and then there's the other part of me that's being held back. And that's due to the nature of Saturn and Neptune sitting on your ascendant, where you're like, yes, I'm going to start these new things. But Neptune's like, are you sure? And it's basically the 12th house is the spirit. The 1st house is the body. So the spirit has to get on board with some of the changes that you're going to physically be doing. And so really, I think you need a little bit more kind of like hibernation mode before you move forward. And I would really advise you maybe to wait until after the new moon, and maybe after, you know, like Mercury has gone direct, which you're going to see right around the 20th. So within this next week, yeah, this next week, there's a number of transits that are saying you actually need to kind of like zen out, and yeah, extremely antsy. The 12th house is like, you're like, oh my God, something's coming, you know, or there's about to be a change, or like, what do I do? You just meditate. That's what you got to do. You rest, you watch a movie, you do some prayer. It's not about outward action, it's about inward action. And if you can be in water, around water, it'll really help you. Or like, also Mars in the 12th house would be good to do like a hot yoga class, go to a sauna. It'd be good to maybe do a dance class, right? Something like that. Usually when Mars is in the 12th house, you're going to be more relaxed if it sounds weird, if you see smoke. So you can light incense, or if you have one of those incense diffusers that kind of like puff, you'll be able to kind of like put it in the air, especially Pisces is oils, and it'll calm you down if you put it in your bedroom, or work with aromatherapy. Foot reflexology can be really good too. Or if you want to get like acupuncture, like some of these things might be like really, really good kind of solutions for some of this stuff. Things will start to subside once you get out of the Sun conjunct Neptune, and when it starts to come into conjunction with Saturn, so you're looking at now the 24th, that's where it's like, okay, I took the necessary time, now I'm moving forward, I got the rest that I needed, and trust me when I tell you, you're gonna need it, because when you start getting into April, and Mars is coming into conjunction with Neptune and Saturn, you're gonna be like, okay, ready or not, here I come, you know, now I'm getting ready to kind of get the show on the road, and I don't know what you're going to do. I don't know if it's going to be a new physical routine. I don't know if you're going to move. I don't know if this is going to be some big changes to your appearance, but like something very big is going to be shifting for you in mid-April when your chart ruler is meeting with Venus, and it's also meeting with Saturn, and it's meeting with Neptune, and it means that you're almost having to get out of your own way, right? I'm sure as an Aries rising, you've heard, oh, Pisces is self-undoing, self-sabotaging. Mars is moving forward, Mercury's the one retrograding. So I think it's more about you going, actually, I have a habit of, you know, not slowing down, or I have a habit of overworking or over-worrying. And I think that I would be taking this time, I mean, in the immediate next week, but really between now and next month, to get prepared for some of the bigger changes that are going to be on the horizon. And like the exciting thing is, Saturn's going to be off of your ascendant, Neptune's moving away from it, Pluto's no longer squaring your moon. Pluto's no longer conjunct your Mars. Like, this is almost the grand finale of all of the transits that you've been going through. Granted, you're in your Chiron return, so a lot of it's going to be about tending to yourself, healing yourself, and finances are going to be more about Venus. So Saturn coming into conjunction with Venus can feel like money is a little tight over the next month, but it can also mean that you're realizing what you need and what you don't need, and you're willingly saying, okay, I'm going to let some things go. The fact that Saturn's going to hit Venus, right when Venus is coming into conjunction with Jupiter, means that you're going to be like, oh, less is more, you know, and you're going to be like, I don't necessarily need all of the extra things, or maybe you are cutting back on stuff that is not as important, or maybe you're really focusing on, you know, doing some abundance work or some manifestational work. And I have a couple Aries risings who have 12th house suns that are going through their Chiron return at the same time. And all of them have told me the same thing. They're like all having health issues, liver issues, migraine issues, allergy issues, unusual things with their blood work. So I'm hoping that you're not having any of those issues. But I would be really keeping an eye on my health, because, you know, Saturn crossing your ascendant, you're more prone to having burns, cuts, bruises, accidents, things like that, especially if you're exhausted, you're not paying attention. If you're not like all there, you'll notice that you're just more prone to some of this stuff. So keep an eye on that, especially at the beginning of April into mid-April. I'm getting ready to do a donation and maybe one more yard sale. Great. Well, the 12th house is great with the retrogrades for cleaning out closets, donating things, giving things away. That's wonderful, like especially to those in need. And that may be like a remedy in some way to subside some of the more negative impacts of like the health related things. Like if I had an Aries rising chart right now, I would be going and donating to churches. I would be going to homeless centers. I would be taking food to animal shelters because of Mercury. I would also be cleaning out my closets and like all of my drawers and my hidden spaces and just getting rid of everything that you don't need. And part of it's also, I can see you're kind of like downsizing because you're probably going to be moving because you're now starting to see that Jupiter is direct in your 4th house, and there's going to be planets that are about you getting a little bit more physically active. Look into issues with like inflammation, like allergies. It can be stuff that's connected to repressed emotions with Aries, or it can also be things that are connected to seasonal allergies. Obviously, you know, Aries is a cardinal sign, so it can be talking about the change of the seasons. And anything that you can be doing to try to eat in a way that's going to be anti-inflammatory would be really ideal. And Saturn hitting your Venus means that there's going to be people who are going to come in that are going to kind of support you. Your Venus is at a 6, so I could definitely see that being very much kind of connected to your health, but it's about you tending to your health, both with the Saturn-Venus transit as well as your Chiron return. So you're not only having your Chiron return, you're going to start now remembering how to heal yourself. South Node Chiron people are people who have kind of worked, I think, as like medicine workers, you know, they worked in hospitals, maybe they worked in surgery centers. Also, it could mean that There are some wounds coming up from the past where you were wounded in a military sense. So like maybe you were in battle, and it's going to be picking up the energy of your Mars. So you want to be really mindful and kind of steer clear of like angry crowds, people who are protesting, that kind of stuff with Mars and Aquarius. But it can also mean that you're starting to remember how to heal yourself. And Aries is the head. So think like things like scalp massages, what is it called? Where they do like the sacral work on your crown. It can also mean that you're doing red light therapy on your face, or maybe you're, doing some kind of like flushes or kind of like cleanses that's connected to your skin. That kind of stuff is what's going to start getting kicked up. But yeah, allergies can be pretty gnarly as you're going through some of these transits for like the next 2 months. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Definitely a lot going on. Changing from head to toe. I like that. I like that a lot. I talk about this stellium on my video this Sunday about how it's like the karma's coming hot and fast. So hopefully it brings you lots of opportunities for healing. You'll have to let me know what happens. All right, let's pull up Rosie. What's up, Rosie? I don't know if you asked a question or not. I did not. I don't remember seeing one, so let me check here. Let's see. Now I'm going back and seeing some people. I didn't see Deanna there. Hey, Deanna. I'm sure Rosie's here. So Rosie, if you're here, will you send me your question and let me know what you want me to look at? Or do you just have general questions? There she is. Peace and light to everyone. Birthday is coming up. Yes, it is, girl. Happy almost birthday. Got a couple of you guys here. So let's take a look. So you're going to be having it sometime, it looks like tomorrow. You have got Mars and Venus in conjunction within about 9 degrees. That ain't bad. And you've got Mercury retrograde conjunct Mars over your Venus. So I live an hour north of my birthplace. It was in Paterson, New Jersey. Let's look. And we'll do a brief review of that. What's up, Mike? There we go. Emperor Powers 1111. All right, Miss Rosie. So your birthday is actually right now. Literally right now. Oh no, that's your solar arc. Sorry, I was about to be like, what? Let me look at this again. I was about to get excited. There we go. Solar return. There we go. So it'll be on the 15th, my apologies, at 1:39 a.m. So this is your solar return chart, Sag rising, Sun in Pisces, you've got Moon in Libra. So this is going to be putting an emphasis on a couple things. One is Jupiter. So you got Sag rising, which is like a benefic, and you've got Jupiter that, let's take a look. Why is it saying your Jupiter is in Gemini? That's not right. Oh, 2026. I'm having like such a Mercury retrograde moment, guys. Sorry. We're going to get it right this time. There we go. All right. So your birthday is going to be on the 15th of March at 7:29 a.m. You've got Aries rising. So this is going to be focusing on Mars. And Mars is in conjunction to Mercury retrograde. So, whoa, so many planets in your 12th house. She says, my dad passed away, so whenever I see your tree, I feel the fuzzies. All right, so obviously you got pretty much all of your planets that are going to be between Aquarius and also Aries. And you got Saturn and Neptune and Venus that are sitting on the ascendant. This is giving, like, on one hand, kind of like Lone Ranger vibes. On the other hand, it's telling me that there's a lot of things that you're coming to terms with that need to be like wrapped up, phased out, cleared out, and dealt with this year. So it's very, it's very similar to Enchanted's chart. So you will feel some of the energies of this all year long. Now, Mars being in Pisces at a 10 makes me feel like there is a big reevaluation of, what is your responsibility and what you want to release and let go of. And that's because Mercury is in conjunction to that. So that could mean old habits, old identities, old responsibilities, even job-related things might be something that you're kind of thinking about releasing. And what really piques my interest is that all this Pisces is intercepted. So it's saying there's going to be some things that are going to come up this year that may feel like they blindside you, but they're actually kind of wrapping up and ending for like a specific reason. It's also in aspect to Jupiter. So you can see that it's pretty wide, but the sun is trining Jupiter. You also see Mars is trining Jupiter. Mercury is trining Jupiter. Like, what's going on, Rosie? Are you contemplating or thinking about moving? Is there a sense of like there is some impending change or relocation that you're kind of thinking about? Are you wanting to kind of like, sit and take some time and like be alone on your birthday? Or are you trying to escape for a couple of days so you can have some peace? Because if that's what you're feeling, I would do that. Especially with this waning moon that's coming in, because it's saying a lot of the stuff that has been kind of on your mind or something that has been kind of subconscious is now not really, now it's starting to kind of get flushed out. Okay, so this, I'm just going to tell you, this is not a very social chart. So if you're somebody who's usually like, yeah, I do all the birthday stuff, it doesn't feel like that to me. It can also mean that this is a period where you're more called to have time to kind of rest and reflect. And so definitely getting into a meditation practice, I say would be really, really, really good for you. With Saturn on the ascendant, she says, I have a nasty cold. So the 12th house is the bedroom. It'll kind of put you in bed. It'll put you down. And if it can be symbolic to saying, okay, Pisces is your sleep, your bedroom, your immune system, sometimes feeling a little run down, that you will see stuff like this that will happen intermittently this year. I think probably the bulk of it is going to be between now and I would say maybe the end of the month. As you're starting to get into like Aries season and planets are crossing the ascendant, you're going to kind of ramp up a little bit. But you're also going to want to watch when you have planets that are going into Virgo, which is going to be like September into October, and then the beginning of next year when you have a retrograde, because you're going to have a retrograde right over the South Node. The 12th house is kind of like the emotional stuff, things that are like psychological, things that are connected to your sleep schedule. It's all like the emotions and things that we don't process. And usually, from what I've seen, when clients have like their 6th house ruler retrograde in the 12th, if they get sick, it's because it's the universe's way of being like, hey, you're not getting the message. Like you're not taking care of yourself, you're not processing these emotions, or you're working too much, or you're not taking enough time to rest. So you'll get put down when these transits happen. So my advice is just listen to your body this year, and if you can get more into like a practice of meditation, maybe yoga, anything that's going to be more flow related or kind of getting to like zen out, it would actually be really good for you. You're also going to see that Saturn's sitting right on the ascendant. Saturn deals with your career and your reputation. So you're going to get a little bit more serious about being assertive when it comes to your goals and also your work. Maybe there are some things that have been kind of brewing, and you've been thinking about, or maybe there are some issues that you have with like confronting bosses or dealing with like superiors at work. And Venus being there is actually really great because it's saying that if you can really stand up for yourself and be more assertive and more direct about your boundaries or about your needs, it can actually draw in relationships, people who want to support you or they want to commit to you in some way, shape, or form. 42 certainly isn't 24 though, although I think I'm a teenager. Well, if you're 42, then you're also moving into your 7th house annual perfection year. So that's a big relationship year. So think back to when you were like 18 and also 30. Big things happen during those 7th house years. So to see your 7th house lord on your ascendant is even more prominent, ruled by Mars. So this like Saturn, Neptune, Venus and Aries is like, I'm fine on my own. I'm doing my own thing. Like I'm good. But it may unconsciously not realize that it's actually drawing in partnerships or it's drawing in people who can be supportive. And I definitely feel like even though you're kind of going through the thick of it right now, you start to hit your groove in April. And I do see that there could be some money stuff that can be changing, but I think it's going to be positive because it's a shift in the way that you look at your values. Definitely see some potential expansion for changes within your home, your family, or your emotions. And I'm looking at that moon in conjunction to Pluto. So I look at that and I'm like, whoa, there's going to be some big changes in regards to your goals with your home, potentially some big changes with your networks and your kind of collaborations. There could be some friendship kind of falling outs, but there could be some new people that can come in that can support you as well. I get accusations in my line of work all the time, but I had one of the nastiest run-ins this past Monday. Oof. Yeah, I mean, I think that in a way it's almost like kind of hiding out, and I'm not encouraging that, but if you're hiding out and you're doing something positive with this energy and you're kind of gearing up, kind of like what I told Crossroads, you're going to have to gear up until you've got planets that are crossing your ascendant. So it's going to kind of do the back and forth until about here. And then when Mars is sitting conjunct the ascendant in this chart around mid-April, then it's going to be go time. And there could be some really good romantic opportunities that could happen kind of mid to the end of April here when Mars is hitting your solar return Venus. The other thing that I would watch is this, when there could be some job-related changes that could happen in August. And I would also watch this when you have an eclipse that's going to be conjunct Mercury. So your health might get checked a little bit again at the end of August. And then as you're going into next year, you'll have an eclipse that's going to be very close to your moon. It almost looks like there's a new community coming in, and there's new friends that are kind of happening, you know? No, I understand this is kind of a recharge. 12th house years, like when you have a bunch of planets in the 12th house, it's like, yeah, you feel like you're isolated, but sometimes it's this theme of having to make a sacrifice, and you're sacrificing something of yourself for another person. And so what I usually do is I compare this to the natal to see what's going on, to see like where the energies are coming through. So if we flip this around and we put this over your natal chart, the Saturn-Neptune transit is going to be very, very close to your Mercury. So where are you making a sacrifice? At work, you know, you're biting your tongue, or you're not kind of talking back, or kind of having conflict with people that you work with. And then also you're going to be seeing that Uranus is coming into conjunction with your Juno, so that can be relationship oriented. And the moon is swinging into your second house. So your values when it comes to your friendships are going to be shifting here as well. All in all, though, I think that whatever's getting cleared out, it's going to be stuff that you don't see coming. And what a great year if you're 42 and you've got Jupiter going through your 7th house. You're going to want to watch transits to your moon this year. So like when Jupiter hits your moon, kind of going to the end of the year, and you're going to have a retrograde over your moon, there's going to be opportunity for a lot of relational things. I would say pretty much end of June, maybe through about the beginning of next year, that can be very relationship oriented, and it can actually be quite positive for you. So let me know what happens. Big changes for my Capricorn risings though. Big changes on the home front, emotionally, and also with family. All right, so have a happy birthday. I hope you feel better. All right, so now we're moving on to everybody else who's in the queue. So thank you guys for your patience. I appreciate it. If you haven't already, give me a thumbs up and make sure that you're subscribed to the channel so you can see more of these videos in the future. And thank you, G. I got your payment. I saw that. Appreciate you. And Elizabeth too. Thank you. Appreciate you. Okay, let's see. So let's move to Emmy. Let me make sure I've got the right info here. And where was that? Where was Emmy? Was she? Oh yeah, she was on the super chat. Almost forgot. All right, there we go. What's up, Emmy? March 16th. We got another one. Happy almost birthday. 97. Elaine, my solar return is upon me. Can you give me advice on how to use my energy and what themes are planetary potential cosmic potholes to look out for? I would say off the bat, two things. One is you are experiencing your Saturn return, okay? And it's going to be on and off all year because Saturn's going to hit 8 degrees. It's going to go up to 15 degrees. It's going to retrograde back to about 7 or 8, and then it's going to move forward. So just assume pretty much now until the beginning of the year, you're in your Saturn return, which is significant for anybody. but it's going to be really significant for somebody who is ruled by Saturn. Saturn is your traditional ruler. So that's right off the bat. And technically your Saturn is in the second house, and it deals with self-esteem, resources, budgeting. Saturn in the second is going to teach you to be more conservative with spending and to kind of like do with less. And also you're having Saturn and Neptune hitting your Mercury. So there's this sense of like maybe getting a little bit more serious about how you want to make money, communicating more with family or siblings. There could definitely be a little bit of back and forth when you deal with like cars, transportation, contracts. So you want to think about that. It's really going to be heating up for you pretty much now through about the end of April. And then your Saturn return is going to come in here. Actually, your Saturn return is going to be like right when Mercury, Mars, and Saturn are conjunct. So really pay attention to April, let's say like the 17th through, I would say, mid-May. My income has increased a lot after Pisces Saturn, so I feel more drawn to budgeting and traveling now. So traveling is going to be the third house. So you'll see the Saturn return happens, and then Saturn goes into the third house. So the third house is more like, okay, do I go on, weekend trips? Am I doing short getaways? Am I wanting to explore new parts of the city that I live in? Am I going to be getting a little bit more active on foot? So it also could mean that you're just walking around more. Maybe you're getting a bike. Journaling and learning can be a huge topic here. So can moving. So sometimes people contemplate moving when these transits happen. And Saturn will retrograde back to your Saturn. So maybe part of your Saturn return is like you going, I work hard for the money. I value being able to have freedom. With that freedom, it's not things, it's experiences. So therefore, I'm budgeting so I can have some of these kind of getaways, right? And it might mean you make sacrifices where you're like, I'm not eating out all the time, or I'm not buying a new car, or what have you. So it sounds like the Saturn return did very well for you because, the gift when Saturn leaves your second house is he left you with more money. Wonderful. That's partly Jupiter too. Jupiter's been definitely helping you out in recent years. Anyway, and Jupiter's also trining your Sun and your Venus too. So that's really nice. So that's going to continue to kind of keep the flow going with the finances. The other thing is that you're not just going through your Saturn return. Neptune is also conjunct Saturn. So there's like a lot of maybe dissolving this feeling of, usually Saturn in the second house has like scarcity issues. So even if you are employed and you got a steady job and you're making good money, there is still this fear that's like, oh, what if I lose it, So I would say it can be good for you to be really building yourself up, doing like affirmations about wealth and abundance and like your worth. And maybe having like a rainy day fund, right? So you're like, okay, the goal is I'm setting aside X amount of money where I've got a couple of months kind of set aside. And I also have, a travel fund, or I have an emergency fund. And you're going to start kind of breaking some of this stuff up. And your Saturn's at an 8. So you might also be contemplating investing or thinking about retirement or other ways to make your money grow, even like high interest yields or something like that. And you've got Pluto that's also dancing with your natal Uranus this year. So it's not exact, but with Pluto hitting Uranus, it means that there's something that's shifting inside of you, energetically, spiritually. And there's some pretty prominent changes that are kind of happening where you're like waking up. And Aquarius is all about freedom. Pluto is going to be dealing more with things connecting to travel because it's your 9th house. So you're feeling this like urge to get up, go places like suddenly, and you get like the travel bug, and you're feeling kind of like wanderlust. While Saturn is, on top of your natal Saturn, it is sextiling Pluto. So part of like leaning into that sporadic kind of travel and freedom, it's going to allow you maybe to like learn more about language. So Saturn in your 3rd house might be about language and like going places and you're like, is there language barriers? Do I need apps for this? Am I learning how to communicate and like kind of transact? And Saturn and Neptune are also squaring your moon. So a lot of it's about being like, I know I need to travel. I'm feeling that. I'm being better with the resources. And because I have it, I'm going to be saving it. Now with a square to your moon, it's like, is it going to be fulfilling? Is it going to make me happy? And it could also mean that it's a situation where you're trying to find the time in your schedule to plan all of this stuff. She said, yes, I made my first commitment to traveling on a plane for the first time as an adult in June. I'm excited. That's wonderful. So you're making the changes. You're making the time to do it. That might be a little challenging, but traveling, as long as it's kind of like the first half of June or so, is generally pretty good. Yeah, the moon squares are not fun. I remember those. And that's a closing square too. I remember when I had my Saturn return, and it was really similar. I had my Saturn return and then it was squaring my moon, and it was Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto. So I don't know what a real moon Pluto square feels like or Saturn square feels like because I had 3 planets at once. It was not fun. And, you know, the moon is the emotional part of the body. So obviously, you're Pisces sun and you got that moon in Cancer, so you're going to be really emotional. But I think that this is maybe trying to get you outside of your comfort zone, switching up something with your schedule so you can make time to get out there and like maybe meet somebody. Like the moon in the 5th house can be about like a relationship and maybe something that can be evolving into something that can be like, very, very close, like something that could be like involving marriage or involving children because it's in your 5th house. If not, it's just about feeling like you can get out and be creative and kind of experience the world and have a little bit of fun. But definitely with all 3 of these things that are kind of happening where you have outer planets like big time that are aspecting your planets and you're having your Saturn return, this is a huge period of change for you. I would just say also keep an eye on what's going to happen later in the year because you're going to start seeing that there's going to be eclipses over the summer in your 7th, which is also indicating big changes for relationships. Jupiter will be going there as well. So you'll definitely see that the relationship land is definitely kind of blossoming, and you'll have eclipses that are going to be in your 2nd house, which are also going to be good for money and stuff. So let's see, you're 97, so you're 29, so you're in your progressed lunar return. So with your progressed lunar return, this happens when you're, was that 27? Did I read that right? No, 29, excuse me. So yeah, so you're in your moon year. So that's your 6th house. Health, habits, scheduling, and then next year is going to be more like relational, but you might get a little bit of a sneak preview actually over the summer. But watch the full moons, watch the eclipses, and any transits that are going to happen in Cancer is when you're going to be seeing that there's going to be a lot more emphasis on, some of your 6th house stuff this year. How to track the moon? I would say, there's a lot of astrology apps out there that'll do that. I mean, a lot of them are free, I believe. I mean, I don't use them personally because I have software, but I would imagine a lot of the free apps will show you. There was one that I used to use and I can't remember what it is, but the moon changes signs every 3 days. So I talk about that on my weekly videos on Sundays. I'm like, this is where the moon is. I would say especially watch the new and the full moon. And I also would say that I would watch the lunar eclipses. And when you have planets that are going to be going through Cancer, so like in June going into July, those are the times that I'd focus on. I sell a digital calendar on my website. So if you want to know like what's going on with transits, I don't necessarily give people the lunar transits because there can be a lot. You're going to see transits all throughout the day. But if you decide that you want that, I mean, there's going to be a lot of them. It'll be like thousands of transits for a year. Just send me a message and I can process that and give that to you. And you just upload it and put it right in your phone and it goes into your Google Calendar or your Apple Calendar. And when you go into your calendar, you can see where all the aspects are kind of happening with the moon. But there's definitely free apps out there that will do it. You try to track the moon already. Well, I remember my lunar year when I was in a Cancer year, and every time there was like a full moon, I was like, what is happening? I was like, is this what it's like to be a Cancer moon? Like all the emotions and all the feelings, but the full moons for sure you're going to feel. Well, I hope you have a happy birthday. And where are you going on your trip? That's so exciting. All right. We've got, who else here? We've got Michelle and then Estella. Oh, cool. Thank you. Well, if you ever want it with the moon, just shoot me an email. I can reprocess it for you and I can give you all the lunar transits. But like I had it on mine and I was like, this is so annoying because you look at your phone and there's like 40 events in one day. It drove me absolutely crazy. I got you, Juny. Hopefully that helped. You might have to go back a little bit, but you can listen to it. Okay. That sounds fun. Have fun in Wisconsin. All right, we have got Michelle and then Estella and then Elaine. So let's go find Michelle here. Let's see, make sure it's the right Michelle, because I got a bunch of you guys. 616. There she is. All right, let's see what Michelle has to say. Is there an end to the unrelenting stress, especially involving my dog and my health? 6:16:63, 7:54 p.m. in Los Angeles. Man, I mean, I feel you. I've seen this for a lot of my Sag risings. A lot of it's because, and especially if you're a later degree Sag, you're kind of picking up the energy of like Capricorn. So to better make sense of this, Mercury rules your 6th house of health, right? So your health, your habits. It also rules pets. And it's a double-bodied sign, and you've got 2 degrees on the cusp of your 6th house. Now, the retrograde is not in your 6th house, but it's the ruler of work, health, and habits. It's also directly kind of connected to, for Sag risings, your career and your responsibility, or something that you have to kind of like take care of. So naturally, as you're seeing this period where, okay, you know, in the last month, you had a lunar eclipse in Virgo at the beginning of March. So it was a lot of bringing you out of work or feeling exhausted with work and having to be home. You then also had a solar eclipse in Aquarius, which looks like it's been a little financially costly. It was pretty close to your Saturn in terms of some of this health stuff. And now you've got a Mercury retrograde that's retrograding in your 3rd house of the mental mind, you know, communication. And Pisces can get a little frazzled when we see a retrograde here. And as a Sag, it's squaring all your stuff. So if you look, it's opposing your Mars. It's also making oppositions to your Pluto. And as Mercury is retrograding, it's coming into conjunction with Mars. It's almost like you're feeling like you're just frazzled with all the things you're having to think about and communicate what you're taking care of. Number one, I would say in your 3rd house, you know, anything that deals with your lungs or anything that deals with your breathing or anything that deals with your feet or your mental health, that's what kind of comes through, because this retrograde is right on your Chiron. So it's really bringing up the themes of emotional healing, breath work, anything that deals with breath exercises, anything that's about kind of strengthening the immune system. And obviously you're a Gemini too, so it's kind of squaring your Gemini energy. So it's squaring your Mercury, which represents taking care of others. It's squaring your Venus, which is also going to be about showing love. Man, this has been like the perfect storm, girl. Will your health improve? Well, your health is more Jupiter. So Jupiter is direct now. And as soon as you start seeing planets that are coming into a trine with Jupiter or a sextile with Jupiter, be that your natal or transit Jupiter, things in theory will improve. So I'm looking for when Venus is maybe coming into conjunction with Jupiter, you can start to see a little bit of a reprieve here around the 18th of March. You're also going to see that the Sun will come into conjunction with Jupiter, although it has hit Saturn first, but this might actually be better spirits at the beginning of April. And then you're still dealing with Saturn and Neptune coming into conjunction with your 4th house. And here's the thing, right? And as a Sag rising, I know you're not going to want to hear this because it's been like several years of Saturn and Neptune and the eclipses in your 4th house and you've been stuck at home or there's been limitations. You're picking up the energy of the Capricorn risings. Saturn's going to come into conjunction with your IC, which means it may mean that you're doing some kind of work from home. Neptune is going to be heading that way too, although it won't conjunct it, but you're going to feel like there are things that are either keeping you at home, they're keeping you bound. Why? Because you're having to make a sacrifice and you have to care for something, whether that's time, resources, or just care, you know, just the energy that you're giving to it. And this is a heavy transit because it's at the most southern part of your chart. So it's really easy to feel kind of stuck, almost like Saturn and Neptune is like throwing an anchor overboard and you're like, what am I going to do? I'm alone here, you know, and I can't leave. Open up the blinds, open up the windows, bring warm colors into the house, burn candles, burn incense, anything that's going to be orange, red, gold, all this like Aries energy. So that way you're not feeling like frustrated and it's a good time to like move things around in the house and kind of change the flow or the feng shui with Mars and Neptune. So you can make things feel like it's better. And this can also bring like a lot of frustration and kind of heated emotions. And then it starts to subside as you're seeing Saturn and Mars start to kind of separate, but Saturn is still going to be sitting at the bottom of your chart. So you will notice intermittently all year long, off and on, maybe it's a peak period now, you know, through about April, and you'll maybe see some other periods when Saturn retrogrades back that you're just like spending a lot more time at home, What you got to watch for is like plumbing issues, water issues, issues with elderly parents, and issues sometimes with like landlords. So it'll come back and it's going to hit here at the end of the year, kind of like October and November, and then it's going to hit one more time, and then it's going to move away, but Jupiter rules your chart, so Saturn's hitting your Jupiter. So it wants you to be home for some reason. And I'm wondering, like, do you work from home? Do you have flexibility in that regard? You know, I mean, Saturn hitting your Jupiter for sure can also impact your health. So you've got it here through the Mercury retrograde square, although that's temporary. You've got it here with Saturn coming into conjunction with Jupiter this year off and on. And then you've also got the Saturn-Neptune conjunction that's going to be in your 4th house. I mean, you know, I know what that's like. I have that placement natally, and sometimes feeling like you're just like stuck at home and you can't get out. Like, one of the best remedies for this is you either do work from home or you have to work harder to not always feel like you're bound to your home and your living space. Good news is that Jupiter's going into Leo this year. So this is telling me that there is going to be some good financial changes in your 8th house, and also the potential for traveling to get out of the house. So you're not feeling like super stuck or bound to one place. Pets is going to be more the 6th in Mercury. And so part of what's going on is you've got Uranus coming up on your 6th house, where you were going to have either some health changes, particularly lungs or things to deal with like mental stuff, Gemini. And it's also going to be hitting your Mercury. So this means that, yeah, there could be a lot more kind of like, you know, kind of feeling a little frazzled, taking care of a pet. It'll start to move away from Mercury and start to kind of subside in June going into July. And I would watch out for the Mars-Uranus conjunction. So like pet's health around early July is what I would be watching for. Dogs are usually the moon. And so part of this is you've had Chiron that's also been in conjunction to your moon. So you've got like a dog that probably feels like your child, because this is your whole sign 5th. And it is bringing up these emotional fears of like, oh my gosh, you know, am I going to lose my dog? And I'm not saying that, but that could be bringing up the fears with Chiron on your moon. And that could actually be like making you sick, because you're worrying yourself and you're making yourself sick. And repressed emotions, or not dealing with emotions or crying or getting stuff out while Chiron's on your moon, is something that I would just be on the lookout for, because that can definitely happen. I'm in Aries moon too. I'm 22 degrees, so I've had this Chiron transit, and I'm like, I'm so sick of it. I just want it to go away. Like I think this has been probably worse than the Saturn and Jupiter and Pluto square my moon. I don't know. I definitely think it's been worse. This is all picking up energy also from Mars. And so in your chart, you've got Mars at the top part of your chart. It's almost like naturally, with these planets going through your 4th house, you should want to be home, or you should be wanting to work from home, or starting a business, or doing something creative, or nurturing or caring for something, because it's getting you out of all of this work stuff where the South Node transits have been. It's almost like the universe is like, okay, you're burnt out on work. It's been too much. You're wanting to take a break. So now we're going to give you something that's now going to keep you home. So be careful what you ask for. I'm hoping that, you know, the dog's health does improve, but definitely keep an eye on that when, I would say, Mercury, Mars, and Jupiter conjunct. And then also when you get to like the first 10 days of July. So let's look at this. So when Mercury, Mars, and Jupiter conjunct, it's going to be in mid-April, because Mercury rules your pets. So right around, yeah, mid-April, I would say, you know, the 17th through the 21st. And then when Uranus is sitting on your Mercury. And likely there's going to be a lot of stuff, and grief can be in the lungs too. So if you're having cough or like lung issues, be really careful with that. It's about getting those emotions out. And then the first week of July, when Mars and Uranus come into conjunction on your Mercury and your Venus, then things start to improve, right? Although, you know, Jupiter and Saturn are conjunct, maybe think back to what happened in the late 90s. When you had Saturn that was conjunct or Jupiter. I don't know if you were going through a breakup at that time, or, you know, that could have been a time where you had a kid, or a time when you fell in love, or maybe you were starting a new hobby, there was something creative. A lot of things may be going on with your family. So history is kind of repeating itself with this Saturn transit. The difference is Neptune is there this time as well. And boy, oh boy, when planets go through like the 15 to like 25 degrees of Aries, it's squaring your north and your south node. So it's saying it's helping you kind of release this feeling of having to do everything by yourself, overworking, working hard, You're learning to focus on what's going to bring you joy and what's going to make you happy. And it's helping you reach your dharma, the north node of like relationships. So this might have you looking around going, oh my God, you know, I'm sick. My dog's going through stuff. This sucks. I wish I had somebody. And it's going to get you thinking about relationships and whether or not you want a partner or somebody who would be there to kind of support you as you're kind of going through some of this stuff, and whether or not, you know, it makes you kind of yearn for closer connection and commitment with another person, which will probably come up again in June and July when you go through some of those Cancer transits. Good luck with your health, and sending lots of good vibes for you and your pup. I hope you guys feel better. All right, we've got Estella and then Elaine. Another birthday, huh? All my Pisces are packing in. All right, let's see what Estella has to say. Let's see. Come on, there we go. What's up, Corey? All right, Estella says, could you tell me what's most important for my next solar return? Thank you for your work. Well, let's take a look here. So what year are you in? So you're 33, so you're in your Christ year. Just hot take. Pay attention when planets go into Gemini, all right? May and June, especially you're going to see in like June, July, and August, when Mars and Uranus are in your 10th house, that could be some pretty big changes going on with your work. With that being said, Mercury retrogrades are going to impact you a lot. So you're going to want to pay attention to obviously kind of completing the Mercury retrograde in your relationship house and like reassessing what you want in partnerships. This could even be about coming back and getting a reading. You'll see another one that's going to be taking place in June into July, which is more about friendships and socializing. And then you're going to see a gnarly one that's going to be in Scorpio, where Mercury and Venus will go retrograde in your 3rd house. And I would say be careful with traveling, signing contracts, anything that deals with cars. And if you notice, you know, your 10th house is your career. So your south node is there. So it's about releasing something. And it's ruled by Mercury, which is retrograde, and it squares the north and the south node. So I would anticipate big changes in regards to your career. You know, you might feel like you're kind of at a fork in the road where you go left or you go right. It could also represent where there's some big reevaluations of your status, your relationship status, or whether or not you stay or go in a partnership because your own Mercury is retrograde. If not, it could mean there's like a karmic relationship or reconnecting with people this year, or people who can kind of help you when it comes to making a pivot with your professional life. But in a nutshell, other than that, nope, that's not right. There we go. Your natal chart. Come on, software. Nope. Why is it not picking that up? Give me 1 second. I want to make sure it's picking up from Germany. There we go. Man, this is just driving me crazy. Now, nearest. There we go. All right, so this is for your solar return in 2026. Very similar to what's going on with your transits. Same thing, Virgo rising, Sun in the 7th house, which is obviously very relational. Mercury, which is retrograde, which you were born with, connected to your 7th house. And you got the south node on your ascendant and the north node in your 6th. So it's very obvious that health and habit changes will happen this year, like changing offices, changing schedule, changing doctors, changing stuff connected to the gym. The sun is highlighting the focus on relationships and kind of dissolving old patterns in relationships and trying to renew something. The sun is also connecting with Jupiter, so it's good for relational goals, socializing, network, meeting new people. Probably what piques my interest is that at least the moon is sextiling the sun, so it can say that this can be a year where you can find someone that you fall in love with. It can be a prominent kind of like relationship year, although you have to work for it, Capricorn. And the moon is conjunct Juno, so you might be starting to reflect on, what do I want in relationships? Do I want commitment? Or if you're in a relationship, it's like, are we committing to each other? Are we getting married? Are we having kids? Because the 5th and the 7th house get activated quite a bit. What's also interesting is like the Neptune, Saturn, Venus. It's almost like the focus this year in relationships is how do we go deeper? And how do we kind of break out of just kind of having a relationship on the surface? And a lot of it's going to be financial stuff, intimacy stuff, learning to be a little bit more vulnerable. And the sun's also sextiling Uranus. So you're starting to pick up on the energies of the new moon coming in. I wouldn't quite say it's your actual birthday because it's about 5 days later. But with the sun sextile the moon and with the sun sextile Uranus, there could be opportunities for new relationships, creative hobbies, your own business. Also focusing on partnerships and people who are kind of supporting you, and karmic relationships because the sun's rolled to the 12th. And that sextile to Uranus could be graduations, travels, spontaneous, kind of people coming into your life and being able to just like feel like you can take more risks, you can be free. So you might be kind of breaking with your usual schedule to embrace traveling or being able to study something. I know that there are still going to be eclipses that are tied to Pisces and also Virgo. So you'll want to watch those in August. So you'll have one in August and you're going to have another one that's going to be happening, I believe, in February of next year. Those will definitely light this chart up a bit. But also natally being a Virgo rising, you'll see that as well. So that gets brought up here when you have a lunar eclipse close to your solar return north node. So that could be some kind of relationship fulfillment period. And then you're going to have this one that's going to be here, where you're going to have an eclipse very close to your south node and also your ascendant. And that could be a big turning point in relationships and also in your career because it's squaring Uranus. So, relationships and job stuff looks like they're kind of on the agenda to get reworked this year with retrogrades in both of these houses. I do think that maybe it's easier to navigate because you have that. And I think that's pretty common. I think usually your 33rd year, your ascendant is generally about where it was when you were born from what I've observed. And look at your point of fortune. Right on your Juno. Are you in a relationship? Because if you're not, girl, somebody's coming. Mercury, North Node, bringing you back into harmony with partnership. I mean, you've got, Juno that's sitting in conjunction to your natal Uranus and Neptune. That's also about marriage. You've got Venus that's approaching your natal Venus. But the point of fortune on your Juno and Jupiter on your Mars makes me feel like you're going to get invited to a wedding. It's going to be like a wedding, a bridal shower, an engagement party, where you might meet someone or like a friend wants to set you up with someone. And if it's not someone and it's you, where you're like, oh, I got engaged, or we're moving in together, we're talking about getting married, those things could happen here too. And a lot of it's just this merger that you guys are doing where you're learning to kind of change something about your personal identity by going deeper with another person. That's really the themes for my Virgos and my Virgo risings. So hopefully that's helpful. Quite the year, especially with Uranus going into your 10th house. That's going to be wild. I feel like you might be juggling more than one thing, or you're learning or you're training for some other kind of field or some kind of like certification that you're doing for work in some way. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Estella. Happy birthday. So many Pisces. We have Elaine, and then we have G. Let's see here. So let's go and find Elaine. I think this is you. Let me make sure. Where is it? March 9th? No, that's not it. There we go. All right, so Elaine, March 9th, 87, and that was at 12:20 a.m. I gotta fix that, and that was in Canada. So let's fix that. So 12:20 a.m. It's 1 minute. It's not gonna make a difference, but I want to make sure it's right. There we go. Okay, so Elaine says, hello, date of birth is March 9th, 87. I had a court hearing on March 11th, 2026 for monetary compensation due to a workplace injury. I should receive the decision within 6 to 8 weeks. Astrologically speaking, what are my chances of winning? Thank you so much. All right, well, let's take a look here. So, couple things. Number one is money, just in general, is going to be Saturn, okay? So the money that you possess, that you have, and the fact that Saturn just recently came into conjunction with Neptune, and it happened in your 4th house, means that you're kind of graduating from the most recent Saturn-Neptune conjunction that happened in the early 90s, where a lot of Sag and Sag risings took on a lot of karma in regards to the collective mismanagement of funds, okay? So whether that's collectively people wasting money, spending money, stealing money, whatever, a lot of Sag risings, they took that on because that was the conjunction. The most recent conjunction was in Aries, and it happened technically in your 4th house, right on your Jupiter. So I hope Michelle is listening still, because we have another Sag rising where we have Saturn and Neptune hitting Jupiter, and she goes, hi, got sick, you know, had an injury, and now I'm being compensated. So she has had to stay home, I would assume. So it's not just your chart. Anybody who's got a Sag rising with this Jupiter transit is going to go through that. And even if you don't, even if it's making aspects to Jupiter, and I'm seeing Sag risings that aren't having aspects and they're still staying home. Anyway, Saturn Neptune for sure on your Jupiter means that you're staying home, you're sick. It does require you to kind of slow down, not be leaving the house as much and doing that. But also it can bring you some kind of abundance, right? So part of the abundance is being able to stay home. Money is great too, but you're waiting until you start seeing aspects, I think, between the moon. Now, Jupiter and the 8th house is going to be other people's money. Mercury is going to be more dealing with decisions relating to work. So there's a couple different ways that I would look at this. One would be, all right, you know, Jupiter's already hit your moon. We're also going to see that when Mercury goes direct, that's other people, it will start trining Jupiter again. So I'm thinking, do you get an answer right around here? Around like April 2nd? I don't know how long you've been waiting, but this could be good news in regards to winning something legally and getting compensation. So that's one date. The other one would be anything that's connecting to Saturn. So then we're also going to see Mars coming into conjunction with Saturn. So if you haven't heard anything by then, the next date that I would be looking for would probably be when Mercury and the moon are going to be in conjunction to your Jupiter around April 15th, because it's picking up the energy of the 8th house and it's bringing you something karmically that other people owe you, moon, so April 15th. And then I would go as far as saying at the latest, you know, even if they make that decision, you know, does it really take maybe until June for you to like get paid out, because you're going to have a Mercury retrograde in your 8th house. So it's about the money that other people owe you, and it's going to retrograde right next to Jupiter. So we're going to see sometime from early June till, I would say, early July, Venus and Jupiter meet, Mercury retrogrades, boom, you get the funds. So you may very well get that answer. I mean, I think you will. But is it going to be a little bit delayed, or is it going to be something that's paid out over time? Or are they going to be saying, well, we're going to reimburse you for medical bills, or we're going to pay your insurance, or we're going to extend your insurance, or we're going to pay you for so long because you're going to be on disability? Because it may not just be a single payout. It might be something that they pay out and then it's going to be reevaluated depending on your injury. So there can be some reevaluation, and also realistically, how long are you going to be out of work? Are you going to need some medical care or some rehabilitation? Or is this going to be something that's life altering and it's going to be like a chunk of change that you get that they pay out over time? Because something about some of like the squares that you're going to see to Saturn makes me feel like it's going to come in installments. And at least you're having that support. I guess that's a positive manifestation of Saturn hitting Jupiter. And also Saturn is squaring your moon. Oof. So that's also kind of saying like, yeah, it's forcing other people to pay for you to be able to stay home. But it's going to come with this feeling of having to stay home or not being able to work. And then the eclipses in your 10th house also kind of knocked you out of work as well, is what it looks like. North Node coming into conjunction with your Mercury means you are supposed to be then working from home. My thought is that there's going to be hobbies, creative business, side hustles, things that you're doing more for pleasure. That if you have the money that comes in that's going to cover you, you know, while you're technically, you know, disabled or you're healing, there will be other things that you're going to have an interest in doing purely just out of interest. It's not necessarily money making. and you've got Pluto that's retrograding away from your Venus, that could also be a debt giveaway. That's like, oh, there's a lump sum of money that's coming your way, you know, with Jupiter in opposition to Pluto. So putting it all together, yes, I think you have enough triggers in this chart that could certainly justify, you know, getting that payout for, you know, a disability or for an accident or an injury. But be mindful that it's either going to be reevaluated as to whether or not you're going to get it continually, or it may potentially be paid out over time, or they may give you the option, the offer. Like I see the Mercury retrograde as maybe them going, we'll give you this lump sum, or we'll pay you out X amount a month for, you know, indefinitely or until this period of time. And you're going to have to decide how you want to take the payment. So whatever you do, even though you're going to spend a lot of time at home, put this into things that you could be doing that's going to be creative, that's going to bring you joy. It would be a real good use of that energy. And I hope you feel better. Certainly Saturn and Neptune on your Jupiter, that's a bummer that you had a health issue. Was it anything connected to like your hips or your thighs or like your thigh bones? Because that's what Sagittarius can be. Usually Aries also can be things that are kind of connected to bumping your head, or if you've had like concussions or something that's gone on with that. So I'd be curious what happened. All right, Elaine, definitely give me the feedback and let me know what happens. Thanks, Stella. Well, if you're super single, get out there, girl. Those are some great transits that you're going to be having. Perfect time. All right, we've got, okay, G's here, and then we've also got Sarah. Thanks, G, appreciate you. Let's take a look here. So let me pull you up. There it is, G. And then we've got the X. All right, so this is what G says. So G says, synastry reading. So you're born in Bath, Maine, October 4th, 96. And then the other person is born in Norway, Maine. Happy Saturn return to me. Oh, Saturn the 7th. And you're basically a Libra rising. So you're a Virgo rising, but you're basically, this is tracking as like you're a Libra rising going through the Saturn transit in the 7th house. Oh boy, and your Saturn is retrograde at a 3. So like the situation that you kind of pointed out to me is pretty obvious in your astrology. So she says, what do I need to do to get over my ex? No issues in my relationship, but I keep thinking of him. I want him in my life, but I know that we could never just be friends. I shut him down when we last spoke at the end of May. I knew if I entertained it, Saturn would bonk me on the head. So obviously you're ruled by Mercury. You know, you've been going through Virgo eclipses, which have probably been very humbling with the South Node going through your sign. And also, you know, you're in the middle of a Mercury retrograde. So Mercury is technically retrograding whole sign in your 7th house, but it's predominantly in your 6th. So it's a lot of like health, habits, trying to clear stuff out, balancing your routine, that kind of stuff. And she's in her Saturn return. And she knows she's in her Saturn return. And what's interesting is that her Saturn is retrograde. So Saturn in the 7th house is like the karma, the limitations, the reassessment, because it's retrograde, of whether or not she goes back to, connects with, or communicate. 3 is a Gemini degree with an X. Saturn also represents boyfriends and things connected to romantic partners. So as Saturn is coming into conjunction with your natal Saturn, which it pretty much is now, I would assume like Venus coming into conjunction there is a lot of you going in the last week or two, I really value this person, but everything's hitting the South Node, but gotta let them go. You know, it's like, love them, but can't do it this lifetime, especially because it'll create a lot of issues in your relationship. You're right. Saturn will definitely bonk you. Neptune is there too. And there can be a tendency, I think, with like the Saturn-Neptune transit in the 7th house to like idealize people. So just to be fair, watch for that. There can be this sense of being like, you remember all of the good things and like all of the connections and like all the good times, but you can be really putting them on a pedestal in a way. And if you were to reconnect with them in a way, you would probably realize very quickly that's like, oh, this is not a good idea, or like this is going to threaten my existing relationship, right? Because Neptune can distort things and it can erode things, and then Saturn is like, boom. Also, you might just be feeling energetically that they're going through stuff. Like I have noticed with Saturn and Neptune in my seventh house of the last year. Let's just say that there have been people who I've dealt with that their lives aren't going very well from what I hear. I don't know. I don't respond to those conversations. But like karma comes very quickly in the seventh house. So it can mean that people are now kind of like lost, or they're lonely, or they're wanting to connect. And even if he's not reaching out to you and you cut that line, you can be feeling that they are alone or they're struggling. And so you're kind of like, oh, am I supposed to talk to them? And I would be like, no, dude, your Saturn's retrograde. You have to let them go. You have to let them figure it out. Be more focused on what's going on with your existing relationship. And then watch when Saturn sits on your south node. Is it going to release something? And a lot of this is karma, because Saturn, south node, Juno, you weren't really going to learn about relationships and tests until this year. And it can mean that people can be going through things and they can work on themselves and they can like come back, but they don't necessarily have to. And then insult to injury at the same time, now Saturn's coming into an opposition with your sun in Libra and then your Chiron, more so next year. But I mean, the sun Saturn is like, oh, I love somebody, but I got to keep them at a distance. And, I really, I love them, I appreciate them, but they're not good for me. Chiron, Saturn in opposition to Chiron. Girl, get a helmet, because whatever is coming with Mercury, Saturn, Venus, I mean, there's a possibility you could hear from somebody and you have to shut it down and you have to be like, nope. And that could be happening. I keep an eye on this around like the 19th and the 20th of March. I'd keep an eye on this when the sun's meeting with Saturn around the 24th of March. And then I would also be watching when Mars comes into your seventh house, kind of mid-April, pretty much until like the 24th, 25th of April. Until this energy clears, something is still getting shaken out in relationship land. That can also mean you're going through your own kind of like tests in your existing relationship as well. So when you're asking me, how do I let go of my ex? Just in simple terms, like you have to let them go, because whatever is going on in their lives right now, it's like that's their path that they have to walk. And I actually would be more concerned about you being around them, because they would like drag you down. Like Saturn and Neptune on your descendant means that they would drag you down. And Neptune conjunct your Saturn means also they would probably create a wedge in your existing relationship, and they would make you start to question things. I'm all about making lemonade, so I want to find the positives. And I think the positives in this is that it's all trining your Pluto. So the power is the power of words, the power of communication, being like, this is the end, this is where it ends, or, please don't cross this line. Or sometimes it's blocking people and creating that boundary or that border. I don't know, that could be part of it. But we look at your composite chart, or actually your synastry chart with your ex, and we've got his moon on your south node. So he's soul family, and possibly and even potentially somebody who you've maybe been with in the past. He's got his Juno on your descendants, conjunct Saturn, so he kind of embodies the person that you want. And his south node's in your seventh house, which you're used to, but that's that feeling of like somebody who kind of just, they're familiar, but they slip through your fingers and you have to kind of let them go. That's my interpretation. Chiron on your north node, I mean, this is the kind of chart of somebody who could really break your heart, girl. I mean, you're born with some of these placements, and you guys are very close in age. You guys are the same year, just a couple of months apart. But because he's got all these placements in the angular parts of your chart, it's like, oh my God. So he's Venus retrograde in Gemini. Those ones are always fun. They never seem to know quite what they want. So let's flip it around. Let's see. Oh, 29-degree Libra rising. So he's literally, like when I said like, oh, Saturn's going into like, your seventh house, they need to deal with like the karmic reckoning. In theory, some could argue that Saturn is going into his seventh house whole sign as well, but he's a Libra rising. So a lot of like the Saturn relational things aren't really going to happen, I think, until another 2 years from now, when it's kind of the late degrees of Aries. Right now, Saturn is coming up on his natal Saturn in his fifth, and it's also hitting his moon, which means that he's now starting to reevaluate like what he wants in relationships, right? He's approaching 30. A lot of it could be like, oh, did I lose that person who I was in love with? Do I want to reach out to her from a distance? Do I want to have kids? Like all that stuff. And you trigger a lot of stuff in his chart too. Your Juno on his south node, your sun obviously conjunct his north node and Chiron. Like he will probably feel like you're the one that got away. And the 12th house can be about that psychic and spiritual connection. So I wonder if it's like not necessarily just you thinking about him, but also being like, oh my gosh, like, am I picking up on this because he's thinking about me? That's the vibe that I get. What an intense chart. 29 degrees Libra rising, Venus retrograde, conjunct the sun. I mean, this is a guy who's always going to be in love with two people, you know? I mean, I don't know what you know about what he's got going on in his life, but if he's got his chart ruler retrograde conjunct the sun, it means that he will probably end up having affairs with women that he works with. It also means, because Mercury is the dispositor, he'll get involved in relationships where he's committed, and then there will be lots of conflicts and arguments because Mercury and Mars are right along his 7th house cusp, and partners will get kind of agitated and combative, you know, with him. I mean, this is not an easy chart, babe. Moon conjunct Saturn, so there's some like emotional kind of like blockages and hardness and like needing to learn how to show up in a relationship and maybe not hide, maybe be a little bit more vulnerable or transparent, especially if he's got like commitment issues. I could see that being another issue as well. So look, you love who you love, but my advice is keep this one far and far away. Because if you allow him to come back in during these periods of time, or if you get weak and you're like, I'm going to reach out to him, like I can tell you right now, y'all can't just be friends. I mean, that's not going to happen with some of the nodal aspects that you guys have. I'm curious, because you have so many planets in similar signs, this is technically your guys' composite chart. So together you guys are a Libra rising, your sun is in Leo, and your moon is in Taurus. So Venus rules this chart. You got Venus that's up here conjunct Mercury. I bet you when Jupiter hits that, and when Mercury retrogrades there, you end up talking to him. So sometime the end of June, maybe, because you're going to have Jupiter on your Venus and Mercury retrograde on your Venus and on your Mercury, or you're having dreams about each other in June going into July. And then when you have Saturn retrograding over your descendant, and then you have Venus retrograding coming into conjunction with the sun, maybe he's trying to be like, oh, hey, like, can we connect again in the fall? Like, he's going to hang around, basically. Like, he's there. Like, he will always be there, but he's got a lot of karmic entanglements with more than one person. So, you know, you would have to kind of know that going into it. And I would be very, very careful with Saturn and Neptune on your descendant with getting involved in someone or trying to talk to them, because they'll kind of energetically leech onto you, and like they're not going to be what they seem, especially if he's a Libra rising. I mean, he's a late degree, but he's a Libra rising. So whatever you're going through right now, where there could be somebody who's kind of like playing games, he's going to go through that in a number of years when Saturn gets up there on his descendant. I don't know. I think this is the year that you either let him loose, or you have to decide if he comes back, if you're going to be willing to leave a relationship and let him go back in. But I can't really recommend that with some of your guys' aspects. I think he's going to be a very difficult chart. And I think that if there's an opportunity to be friends, I would give yourself another year to have some space and really make sure that your relationship is solid. And maybe at the beginning of next year, about a year from now, when you're having retrogrades over your composite sun and it's trining Saturn, then if you guys can be friends, and it's being friends, maybe it can be something, especially when you start seeing the Saturn trines. But I would really, really like to see Saturn off your descendant. I'd really like to see Saturn off the South Node, because I think you owe it to yourself to see if you can be really kind of in a relationship that could be healthy and thriving and better for you. And then you decide if you want to let him back in. But my goodness, he's got a difficult chart. And I've seen thousands of charts. That is a difficult chart. So I don't know what the story is with this one. But yeah, Venus retrograde in the 12th, and then he's got like these Mars, Mercury, Pluto oppositions. I mean, he might feel like other people are combative, but it seems almost like he's the one that is like hiding from stuff, or he doesn't want to completely talk about how he feels or be transparent about his relationships. And then it turns into arguments, but it's because he kind of has a tendency to hide. Ugh. All right, let me know what happens, G. I would say keep him far away, keep him blocked, and maybe do some cord cutting, especially in April, like when Mercury, Mars, and Saturn are there. I would be like writing something down, you know, like releasing all the contracts, because you guys have them with the South Node, and I would be like ripping them up, burning them. I would do a cord cutting ceremony or a ritual, something where you're taking like a cord or a string and then you're burning it. So you're like, I'm setting him free, because you'll be feeling some of the effects of what he's kind of going through, and you don't want to be picking up on that. Good luck. All right, and we have Sarah. Just want to make sure I didn't miss anybody because we had a lot of different things that were kind of going on. So once I have Sarah, I'm pretty sure that that's everybody. If I missed you for whatever reason, give me a shout in the comments and let me know. That's what I needed to hear. Sorry, babe. But I would rather tell you the truth because that is going to be oof. All right, let's pull up Sarah. What's up, Sarah? Sag rising with that sun in Taurus and moon in Cancer. So Uranus is wrapping up on your sun. Man, Saturn and Neptune are squaring your Venus, and also it's squaring your Uranus and your Saturn. So there is something really big brewing in the relationship department. Okay, let me go back to your question. So we also have your partner. Let's see. There we go. All right, so Sarah says, I'm May 20th, 88. He's August 6th, 75. Hi, Candace. I broke up with him on Sunday due to him not working. His work is long overseas contracts, but he doesn't want to leave his child. Do you see him changing the situation? The relationship was great, so feeling a little heartbroken. Yes, puppies. I knew I was forgetting somebody. That's why I asked. Okay, apologies, puppies. I'll make sure that I put you on there. I do have your question. And then you sent me the synastry. That's what you wanted between you and your friend, right? All right, Sarah. So let's see. So basically, the back and forth with the guy. He has a kid. He's also having another kid. And then you guys are kind of trying to do the back and forth and trying to figure out whether or not it can be a thing, right? And so it sounds like he's unwilling to make that change, and you're trying to figure out what to do. So look, here's the deal. Before we even look at his chart, you know, Saturn and Neptune are sitting in a degree or degrees that are at a critical point where it's squaring Uranus, where honestly you can feel like you're going crazy. And it's also squaring your Venus, where you're like, you know, who's going to love me? You know, Aries 5th house. What about me? Like, what about what I want or what I need? And so other people's relationships, believe it or not, is your first house. So the fact that it's squaring Uranus means that you're kind of like, oh my gosh, you know, like you look at the situation and you're like, he doesn't love her or he's not happy with her. At least that's what he's telling you. And then you also look at the situation and go, why am I not getting what I need from him? So there's definitely this like reevaluation of what's going to be best for me. And it feels like critical. I mean, especially right now, I would say through like the next month or so. And then things are going to start to kind of shift. And Mercury is also retrograde, which rules your relationships. And it's been going retrograde over your North Node. It's almost like kind of keeping you in the dark and there's not a lot of clear communication or kind of feeling like somebody has just kind of cut you off. And then when you start to see that Uranus is off of your sun, you'll have more stability with men. And then when you start to see that Saturn is now moving into a trine with your ascendant and a sextile with your descendant, relationships, in theory, should improve. However, I know that for my Sag risings, you know, Uranus going in and out of Gemini has been suddenly somebody comes in and then they come out, you know, so you need to keep that in the back of your mind that that's still kind of hovering in the background. The relationship stuff, let's see. So this is him. So he's got Venus retrograde in Virgo. He's got his South Node on your sun. He's a Capricorn rising, and he's only been married one time. So his marriage is his moon, and Pluto has been in opposition to his moon for literally the last year, and there's been even a Mars-Pluto retrograde, so it looks like that there was a kid, and then he was like, okay, I'm going to stay, or, you know, there was talk of, well, are you going to leave me? What about our child? Kind of thing. So there's definitely been a lot of, like, influence with the relationship here. But lovers is more the 5th. So he's had Uranus going through his Mars and also his South Node, and it manifested as a Taurus coming in who he had this kind of connection with. Oh, he's divorced. Okay. So what's the problem then? So why did he leave? Because I mean, in his chart, he's had Pluto in opposition to his moon. So he's either very reluctant to wanting to commit to a relationship because he wants that kind of identity, or he wants to have his own authority, or he doesn't want to be tied down. Let me make sure this is the right time. Hold on. So I've got 5 p.m. August 6th, 1975. And this was in Macedonia. Just want to confirm. That's what it says on PayPal. August 6th, 75 at 5 p.m. in Macedonia. So is that not the right time? Just want to make sure. He is a Leo sun and moon, but if you have him as a Leo rising, that means that he was born at a different time, because you put 1700 hours. 5 a.m. Okay. That's a little different. No, it's okay. Usually it's me. I'm not going to give you a hard time. All right, so he's got Leo rising, Leo sun, Cancer moon. So the eclipse is happening in the 7th, is trying to push him more in the direction of relationships. But he's reluctant because of some of the squares to Uranus. So it's saying like, oh, he doesn't necessarily know if he's ready for that status change or if he's ready to move, so on and so forth. So really Saturn and Uranus are going to be dictating what happens with his relationships. You guys have moon to moon, you have sun to Mars, you've got Venus close to the south node, not exactly conjunct. Let's look at the composite chart, because it sounds like you want to know what's going to happen. The synastry is just going to talk about how compatible you guys are. So what's going on right now is together you guys are a Libra rising. That means that you're ruled by Venus. And over this next year and change, you're going to start seeing Pluto in opposition to the Venus. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be the end, but it's certainly in the 4th house, which is like challenges with changes with the home, living situation. And also it's coming into the 5th house where there's going to be matters of, well, you know, do I want a relationship? Do I want freedom? Are children getting involved in some way? And Jupiter will hit Venus, and then Saturn's going to hit your Mars. This is tricky, because you're going to see some stuff that's going to be difficult, like Saturn coming into conjunction with Mars could mean like dealing with work schedules, dealing with limitations, needing kind of independence, at least until May. And then you're going to see Jupiter hit your Venus, which could be a more fortuitous time for you guys in July, especially if you guys start kind of connecting or seeing each other or talking again. And then you will start to see Jupiter and Saturn trine. Now, because Mars is the ruler of your 7th house, the problem is that Saturn's going to retrograde over Mars. So there's a lot of scheduling issues, traveling issues, people that aren't totally sure of what they want. And then you got to wait till Saturn goes back into the 7th house, which will be the spring of next year. And then Mars is going to retrograde. And this is kind of saying like there could be other people that you guys meet. It's also saying it's going to be hard to be friendly, because it's not going to maintain as just like a friendship. And she says he doesn't want to leave overseas to work. It means he has to leave his kid. The ex won't let him take the kid with him. So there you go. So it's literally the drama, Pluto, of what's going on with a kid and the drama with the home. And the sextile that you're seeing right now to Saturn and Neptune is that the relationship feels like it's just kind of getting washed out because there's a lot of drama and there's like heartbreak. And I don't think it's easier for either one of you, but I think maybe he's like ripping off the bandage because he feels like that's what has to happen. And also he knows you won't move, because when the eclipse happened in his chart, it was, you know, squaring Uranus in the 10th. So it was like, you're not moving either. Could you guys come back together with this chart? I mean, man, this is always going to be an issue. Look at your guys' astrology. Saturn opposed Mars. So home versus relationship. Saturn and Pluto square the north and the south node, where relationship and diplomacy and balance when it comes to changing where somebody's living and also changing with what we're doing for work. And then on top of that, you're going to be seeing over the next 2 years, Saturn's going to be coming into opposition with Saturn. I mean, it literally means that, you know, you guys are going to approach the relationship by being like, cool, you have to do what you want to do. You know, that's not what I want. I want to be with you, but I understand you have to do what you need to do. And like, I have to do what I have to do too. And it's also your guys' Uranus opposition. So what's pressing on this is like changes in regards to having to do these things for physical and financial reasons. Uranus is conjunct Chiron. Somebody's like, I gotta work, I gotta make money, I gotta stay here, you know, or I gotta be where I can work. She says, I'm happy to move, but need him to work to make money. I mean, I would be really careful with that personally, because I think that it doesn't really matter where you are, you're going to have these issues. I also think that trying to make a decision about packing up and moving to another country while you're having a retrograde in your 4th house is not a good idea. It's possible, you know, when you start seeing retrogrades in your 10th house where you're more willing to kind of change directions with work, or maybe work remotely or change jobs or step away from work. And you also start seeing that those retrogrades at the beginning of next year might mean that, you know, he's more willing to change his living situation or move or bring you in and accommodate you. That may be a better time, but you're not going to see something happen relationship-wise until you have something really prominent going on with your natal Mercury. Your Mercury is, 21 degrees, so being with a foreigner makes sense, but it might mean that they come in pairs, or you might see different people who are going to pop in. And I would also say to you that the Mercury retrogrades are always going to throw you for a bit of a tailspin with relationships. This one's a little bit more difficult because it's like he's not working, because the retrograde's 10th house from the 7th. And it's about you being in your feelings. The next one's going to deal more with your partner's money. So I'm wondering, like, is it going to be better for him if he kind of gets things situated financially and he's working? Would you then open the door over the summer to talk about reconnecting and then talk about living together? Personally, girl, with Saturn and Neptune squaring your Venus and squaring your natal Saturn, I would be like, be very careful making personal sacrifices for another person right now. I would be more focused on what is going to make me happy, and am I actually going to be happy, like making all these sacrifices for somebody this year? He said he could look at doing it next year. Next year would be better because you're going to have better aspects in your guys' composite chart. You're still going to have Saturn opposed Saturn, Saturn conjunct Mars, so it's going to be a lot of back and forth. What do we have to do? And if you're used to working all the time and you're going to move somewhere where you can't work, you're going to need to know that he can work. And that's part of what the squares are. It's about every 7 years renegotiating what we're doing with work, where we're living, what's going on with relationship type of stuff. That's what you're going to see. But I think for you, Jupiter hitting your moon may indicate that your partner's working, making money over the summer. You guys start talking about this in July, and then I wouldn't even remotely consider thinking about like moving maybe until you get the eclipses that are going to be in Aquarius next year, because at least they'll sextile Saturn. So doing it anytime, I would say the beginning of next year would be better, both because these eclipses are going to trigger a move and potentially being in a foreign place. And you'll have the retrogrades that are going to be going on in Virgo, which means you could take a step back from work, and also a partner would be making changes with like the living situation. But I'm not going to candy coat it. Your chart it has all these, your relationship chart has all these, kind of cardinal squares in it. South Node Moon means you're going to go through intermittent periods where somebody's working and then they're not working, or, somebody wants to live here and then they don't want to live here. And the moon squares Pluto. It opposes the North Node. I mean, this is a very, very complex period. Approach the conversation about talking about the living stuff again in June. And then if you're going to make the move, I would say you're smarter to do it at some point, the beginning of next year, probably about January through March. And then by then Saturn's really going into the 7th house, and then it's going to be like really learning how to work with each other as it's opposing Pluto. Even then it can mean that it's very difficult. So it can mean that it can get pushed beyond, the spring of next year as well. I think it's just needing to do what's best for you while you're having some of those squares in your 5th house to your 1st and your 7th. And probably, I would say also like make sure like that's his actual birth time. Like really make sure, because you just said, 5 a.m. Like we don't know if that's the exact time. If it is, then a guy that has this many planets in the 12th house can be particularly difficult to read, especially if he's got, Saturn rules his 7th and it's conjunct the moon. Sure, he wants to be with like a foreigner, but all these planets in the 12th house is like kind of secretive, and he's had a lot of job instability with these Uranus transits here, and there's definitely going to be some kind of potential home change again in the fall. I mean, I wouldn't want you to be thinking about moving in with him or anything until at least we're starting to see him coming through some of these periods this year into early next. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Wild chart that both of you guys have together. That's such a crazy composite chart. It's always like everything's, you know, everything's being rearranged when it comes to all that stuff. All right, let's pull up puppies. Make sure I've got the right info for you. So Puppies was saying earlier in the live that they wanted something positive. So I want to focus on positive in life. Can you do a quick synastry for me? So I have you 11/10/83 in Lexington, Kentucky, and that was in the AM. And then you've got the best friend who's 3/29/92. So let's look at that. (3/29/92), 12:55 p.m. All right, so we have got you, Puppies, Scorpio rising, Sun in Scorpio, Moon in Capricorn. Very Scorpio Capricorn. I would imagine if you have good friends, you're like, I need to keep them close by, because you probably don't like just about everybody that you meet, right? You're welcome, Sarah. And obviously this is going to be on your mind a little bit because Venus is in Libra in your 11th house. So it rules relationships. It also rules friendships. You've been going through some transits where Pluto has been trining Venus. So maybe you're really realizing the importance of having good friends. Uranus has been also trining Venus. So you realize just how much it helps you emotionally or psychologically, or just how much change happens with friendships as you get older, and like that you want to hold on to good friends. She says, my mom and this friend have been there for me this week with my dog is so sick. I'm sorry to hear that. Well, here's the good part. The good part is that you have managed to actually make it through the South Node eclipses in the 11th house, where any friends that were kind of fair weather friends have gotten cleared out. And now you're starting to see Saturn and Neptune are kind of coming out of the opposition with Venus. And so usually you hear like Saturn, Neptune opposing Venus is like, oh my gosh, you know, you're really going through a lot of strife and, you know, you're not going to be able to get the love that you need. But in this case, because you have Venus in its home sign, you know, you're picking up the energy of a whole sign, 6th house Scorpio, where Saturn and Neptune went into your kind of pets zone and health zone, and it's opposing Venus in the 12th, which means other people come to you, you know, at your time of need. So it's about them kind of supporting you. So yeah, I have a lot of Scorpio and Capricorn in my chart too. I feel the same way. So that's why I was like, it's hard to make good friends with these placements, although you are a lot more charming than you give yourself credit for with Venus and Libra. So that materialized in a very beautiful way. I would say that a lot of this is also your natal Mars. You had an eclipse. I mean, we could go back, but you had an eclipse here that was on your Mars, which was not only your chart ruler, but also your 6th house ruler. So that solar eclipse in September was seeding potential job changes, friend changes, karma revolving around friends that would then materialize when that became a full moon lunar eclipse, which was here, where then all of a sudden there was more health issues, maybe connecting to, you know, dogs or pets, Virgo. And so that's been happening. You will see some pretty interesting things in your 6th house, like Chiron is going into your 6th house. So this could mean dogs having allergies, they're having blood related issues, they're having issues with digestion. You have Venus and Saturn, which have been in conjunction. So you've had support of friends as you're going through some challenges with your pets. And you're going to see the Sun coming into conjunction with Saturn and Neptune. So watch your pet's health around these days, like the 19th, the 21st and 22nd, and then it subsides a little bit, and then we're going to start to see some conjunctions again where Mars is conjunct Neptune and Saturn from April 11th basically through the 22nd. These are all going to be real peak periods here. Even though it's in your 5th house, this is really dealing with pets. After that, I'm not seeing as many kind of hard aspects to Mars. So things in theory should subside, but I mean, honestly, Saturn, Neptune going in the 6th house, I mean, when that happened, I mean, that was a long transit. That was like, you know, Saturn and Neptune were there for about 3 years, but Neptune being in my 6th house, I've put down several dogs. I've had dogs go through physical therapy. I've had all kinds of stuff go on. So it's really hard to say. You might have to kind of dig into your progressions, but certainly when you see the clusters in Aries is when it's going to be more prominent. All right. So getting into like the friend chart. So your friend is a Cancer rising, and they have a moon in Aquarius, and their moon's conjunct Saturn in the 8th house. So they have this like very kind of Scorpio Saturn vibe, which you have a lot of Scorpio and Capricorn in your chart. So they can be kind of like funny and cynical, and kind of like they have like that darker humor, even though they're a Cancer rising. So I think that's why you guys vibe. And then when we put your guys' charts together, they have Pluto on your ascendant and conjunct your Mercury, which is like, you guys just think the same way. You can like read each other's minds. There is a sense of like, you know, being able to be on the same page, and like you guys can kind of have like these funny inside jokes, and you can like look at each other and you just know what the other person is thinking. You also have, let's see, Neptune pretty close to the moon, which is also a pretty close spiritual connection. Kind of feels like soul family. She has her moon and Saturn trine your north node. And what's interesting is her moon and Saturn square your sun and Saturn. So she teaches you more about like not getting so emotionally involved in things and being kind of detached. And I keep telling all my Scorpio risings, I'm like, you guys are going to learn with the north node in Aquarius and like the eclipses in Aquarius and Pluto in Aquarius. There's the family you make, and then there's the family that you're born into. And so Aquarius in the 4th house means that you're adopting new people who are friends and community that feel like your soul family. So with her having her Mars there, her moon there, and also her Saturn kind of between the Aquarius and kind of Pisces area of your chart, it's a good combo. Mars trine Pluto is good. She's got her Sun and her Mercury in the 5th house, so she kind of makes you feel like young and youthful. But it is picking up that energy of the 6th house, where it's like her being like, hey, I'm here to help you. Like, do you need anything? So whether your dog's going through stuff, you're sick, you need some support, she'll be there to help you through that. And her Sun and Mercury oppose your Venus. So oppositions, I think, here are very strong. She may be your Saturn person. She may be literally sometimes, you know, Saturn and Aries, like, you know, the devil will send you an Aries to kind of help you through. And the trines that you have to your Uranus and your Jupiter make me feel like it can be like her trying to be funny and trying to kind of like lighten the mood and trying to kind of get you out of your comfort zone. Jupiter also sits on your midheaven, and it opposes her Mars. And then in her chart, as a Cancer rising, your moon's along the descendant. So that's definitely providing that kind of more emotional, mature kind of perspective on things. Sun is really close to her Pluto, and you've got your planets in the 4th house. So there's definitely like, you know, she understands what it's like to go through difficult or hard times at home and to be like alone. And maybe, I mean, you know, she really can like appreciate that, you know, if you're going through something, she can be there to help you, and vice versa. You can do the same thing for her. Both of you guys have those planets in the 4th house, which makes you guys feel like family. Her Venus trines your Sun and your Mercury. Her Mars trines your Pluto. Your Venus and your Mars are in the 3rd, so it's a lot of like communication, texting back and forth. And then her Neptune, or your Neptune, falls into her 6th. And your Venus opposes her Sun. So do you guys, I mean, you guys are from the same place, but do you guys live like across town? Like, do you guys not live super close to each other? We do sometimes fight, but we always communicate. Well, that's just going to be the nature of your Capricorn moon and her Aries. That's really what that's going to be. But I really feel like the moon stuff is really interesting, because it really talks about like you being kind of like the grounded, more like mature. It's not an age thing. It's the Capricorn thing that she kind of needs to ground her, especially as Saturn and Neptune's kind of dancing on her Sun and on her Mercury. There's going to be some really big changes she's making with her career. And it seems like she might really benefit from getting feedback from somebody who can kind of give it to her straight, you know? And then if we look at the composite chart here, between the two of you guys, you're Virgo rising. You've got Sun in Capricorn, Mercury in Capricorn, Moon in Aquarius. So Pluto coming into conjunction with your guys' composite moon means that literally through some kind of a crisis that's dealing with a pet, it's connected to the 6th house, is teaching you guys a lot about communication and vulnerability and like the power of friendship. Wow. So I'm wondering when this stuff started. Did it start when Mars was conjuncting Pluto? So was this starting around the end of January that your dog started having health issues? Because that seems to like trigger something. And then this is a chart ruled by Mercury. So Mercury goes obviously retrograde in Pisces. There can be a lot of emotions and kind of feelings and kind of feeling like you need some help or some support. And then you see Mercury and Mars coming into your 7th house. So I see a lot of support. I mean, clear into April. I don't really see any problems. You guys have already gone through your Saturn, Neptune stuff, so that's done. And then Mercury is the ruler. Uranus is trining it. So that's good. And then Saturn isn't going to square any of your stuff for quite a while. I mean, you're not going to go through that for another 2 years or so. So the relationship stuff, I mean, I see it being solid with the North Node being in the 7th and with Jupiter being the ruler in the 2nd. Both of you guys really value this relationship. Nobody really wants to kind of give it up. But man, with like the 4th house stellium and the 5th house stellium, I almost feel like you guys have maybe some like family trauma, or like you guys have both gone through similar situations, or like you have like the understanding of what the other person went through, and you guys can support each other as you go through like some big dramatic home or emotional or family changes, right? She says, I have a reading with you in April. Cool. I mean, for right now, I mean, if anything, this Mercury retrograde has probably brought you guys closer together and maybe kind of realizing like, wow, I really need them, especially with all the squares that are going on to the 7th house, between the 7th and the 4th house. So it mirrors where somebody's like, I don't feel like I have a partnership or I have support, you know? Took her to the vet Friday of last week. So let's look at that. So that was 1 week ago. So that's when Venus was coming into conjunction with Saturn. What was going on with Mars? Mars was conjuncting the North Node. Mars was coming out of a square with Uranus. So if something started, right, like I would say a week or two prior to that, that would be like the Mars-Uranus square. And you were like, oh my God, I need somebody to kind of help me with this situation. So I'm hoping that right around the time that the, Mercury-Mars transits are over, things improve. But not to worry you, but like the next 48 hours, keep an eye on your dog. When Mercury and Mars come together, this is going to highlight your 6th house, and it's going to be about keeping an eye on them, especially like when they're eating or they're around water or in the kitchen, or like watching them at night. So the kitchen is usually like the 4th house. So just make sure they're not getting anything they shouldn't be eating. Make sure that if they need medication, they're being given medication. If you're needing to rest and kind of keep an eye on them or kind of keep them in a crate. Sometimes Pisces can be like isolation. I've noticed like with the Mercury retrograde in Pisces, and it's been like the last 2 years. We had a Mercury retrograde there last year. We had eclipses. We had a Venus retrograde. Every single time it happens, like my dogs get sick. Like every single time. And it's in my 6th house, but it's so bizarre. And they have food issues. They're throwing up. They're being naughty. Just all kinds of issues. So at this point, I've just like thrown my hands up in the air and I'm like, let's just get this retrograde over with. Let's get the conjunction over with the next 2 days. And I would say Mars is usually inflammation, right? So like in your chart, I don't necessarily know your dog's birth information, but Saturn and Neptune, I would be like, dude, there's something that they're allergic to. And obviously you said that they have, what did you say? Addison's. So it can be neurological issues maybe with Saturn and Neptune, digestional issues. It could be, all kinds of things. But immune system issues is what I'd be concerned with. And watch out for like dehydration. Make sure also that if they're having any digestional issues or issues with medication, something that a vet told me a long time ago is like, dude, if your dog is getting sick, just give your dog ground beef. I know that sounds weird, but a lot of dogs, they're getting sick because they're eating kibble and they're eating a bunch of processed stuff they shouldn't eat. And if you're not feeding them that stuff, have they been vaccinated? Are you vaccinating them, regularly? Did you adopt them? Did you, do you know anything about their vaccination records? Because a lot of the vaccines, unfortunately, for pets are now all being connected to mRNA. Like they're all mRNA vaccines. And there's all kinds of recalls that have happened in this last year for different rabies vaccines and different seasonal vaccines that dogs are supposed to be taking. So I'd be very cautious with what medications you would give your dog when you have Saturn and Neptune that are going through your 6th house, whole sign. And also get them on some quality water. Even if you have to spend a little bit more money, maybe change up their meals. Aries is lamb, so I'm wondering like, can you get them some ground lamb or can you give them some ground beef? And try to be just keeping an eye on what's going on with their blood work. If they need to have any blood work, if there's anything that's kind of shifting with that stuff, that's what you want to watch. But all in all, you have a lot of support that's coming through this relationship. And I think that you guys have been through worse. Like when Saturn and Neptune was kind of going through Pisces, that would have been much more difficult in your relationship. Autoimmune. Yeah, she needs meds. So, I mean, you'd be surprised though, like how much you can do if they're having autoimmune issues. Like there's a lot of holistic vets that are treating that stuff, and they're treating it the same way that they're treating humans that are having autoimmune issues. Like they're giving them certain medications that they give horses. So it might be worth looking into. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not a vet. She's eating a burger and rice now. Perfect. But like literally, I mean, you might be surprised if you're giving them beef or if you're giving them lamb. That might be something that helps, but her stomach is going to be very sensitive. And even like watching my husband's, my husband's Scorpio rising, so he's got Saturn and Neptune going through his 4th house now, his 6th house now too. And I've noticed that it's not so much about the dogs like throwing up. It's more now the dogs are acting aggressive. So you've either got a dog that's like sick and not feeling well, or they're just like constantly like fighting and just like throwing down. So hopefully, your doggy's able to kind of rebuttal and feel a little bit better. And definitely keep me updated. Come back and let me know what happens. Watch some of those transits as they're kind of happening. And I know we're going to talk soon in April. So make a list of all the things that you kind of want to talk about so we can kind of dig into your chart. And hopefully I can give you some more insight, especially if you have like the birth information for your dog. We can take a look at their chart. All right, guys. Well, hopefully that was helpful for you guys. I know we have got one heck of a week ahead. So make sure you're subscribed. Sunday, we've got the astro weather coming out. I'm going to talk to you guys about what this Aries stellium means, especially right around the time of post new moon and Mercury retrograde going direct, spring equinox. So many things are going to be kind of shifting all at one time. So make sure you guys are subscribed. Give me a thumbs up and like this video. Join me here next week for live tarot. And if you want to see more about me and my work, click the links below, head over to beyondtheveiledtarot.com. You guys can check out, I teach astrology. I'm actually in the middle of my Astro 301 course right now, but hopefully we can have that available in a couple months. But if you want to learn beginner's astrology or advanced and learn the transits and all my techniques, check out my courses, check out my astro calendars and all the goodies that I have on the website. And you can always book a reading with me there as well. I'm going to be booking in July right now of this summer. So if you know that you have a Cancer birthday, a Leo birthday, a Virgo birthday, definitely get on the books if you want to get a reading. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. I hope you enjoy this beautiful new moon in Pisces, and I'll catch you guys back here on Sunday. Take care.